The manhwa opens with a man informing the president that the national address will begin in 1 minute. The president glances at his watch and asks if that much time has already passed. His assistant responds that power will soon be restored across the entire country. The president stands, folds his arms, and stares directly into the camera. Introducing himself as President Jang Won-taek, he says that before he begins, he has a request. They must ensure that everyone nearby is watching the broadcast, as many citizens as possible need to see it. He is told that the people meter ratings are skyrocketing even though it hasn't been a full minute yet. He acknowledges that the public must have been deeply distressed by the lockdown and sincerely thanks them for their cooperation. He explains that on July 16th, he declared a state of emergency and imposed martial law. The military has taken control of media outlets and national infrastructure, and many major roads have been shut down. He knows the public is wondering why. He asks his assistant, Lee, if he has a cigarette. Lee jokes that opposition party members will use this against him. The president's hand trembles as he lights it. He then explains the reason for declaring martial law, exhaling smoke as he says it is because he wants everyone to face a dignified end. He states that the scenario from the game's survival life is now unfolding in reality. The asteroid from the game, Yunjambi, is real. According to reports received at dawn, the military failed to intercept it, and it ultimately crashed into the sea near Okinawa. The impact caused catastrophic damage, and tragically, the people of Japan have all been turned into zombies due to spores originating from the asteroid. Worse still, the pathogen is expected to make landfall in their country today, and this apocalypse cannot be avoided. From the information gathered so far, a small number of people, including those known as the Awakened, may be immune to zombification. For them, preparations have been made. For safety reasons, these facilities will only open 1 year from now. Time shelters have been installed at marked locations, and citizens are urged to make their way there. The president then provides guidance on how to deal with the monsters that appear during the early stages. All of this information will also be redistributed through flyers dropped from airplanes. He announces that thermal power plants will soon be shut down. Admitting that he is a man of many shortcomings, he says he believes he has done what was necessary in their final moments. He tells the people it has been an honor to be with them and expresses hope that they can meet again and live well. He begins to thank the anonymous informant who provided the exact D-Day date, but the broadcast suddenly cuts out. A man sitting in a chair remarks that he truly hoped the end would never come. But since it is already here, he says he has no choice but to survive. After all, he is a veteran of the apocalypse. The story then flashes back several months. A man asks his friend if he's ready, and the friend confidently says yes. His name is Payak, and his in-game name is Duckbutt. Payak mentions that if he loses today's bet, it will be his 3rd loss in a row. His friend, dressed extravagantly, jokes that losing 3-0 would make him a yellow bean. Another equally eccentric player appears, Survivor 1, referred to simply as 1. 1 complains that his kills keep getting stolen because he's trying to brute force everything. He asks another player if he's wrong, saying he's supposed to be Robin Hood, yet he has the role of Kebop over his head. Kebop responds that they're nothing without flashy moves. To also joins in, saying he's ready to rock their enemies. 1 declares that he'll give them a 1-minute head start, and To replies that he hopes 1 won't regret those words. All of this takes place inside the game's survival life. To and Payak charge straight into the horde. The game is revealed to be an apocalyptic survival title that mixes zombies with fantasy monsters. Its extreme difficulty intimidated even hardcore Korean gamers, yet it shot to the top of the charts upon release. However, the hype quickly faded, and not long afterward, the game was nearly abandoned. After a year, only 4 concurrent players remain. They let Kebop take the final hit, and he thanks them, pulls back his bow, and fires an arrow that blows a hole through the monster's head. This made clear that, despite everything, the game is actually pretty terrible. Once the hunt ends, the bet is over and the group relaxes. One of them asks if there's anything else to play. They respond that, if there were, they wouldn't be standing around making stupid bets. 1 agrees, saying the game is boring but there's nothing else to do. Payak comments that it wouldn't be surprising if the servers shut down today. 1 agrees, but To says he needs excitement and dopamine and might go gamble on Counter-Strike. Kebop says he told them to take things slowly. 1 asks if they want to try another game, but To says his body can't handle it right now, and Payak agrees. Kebop then calls everyone over, saying they need to see something. It's been a long time since anyone spoke in chat. A player named Noob appears, asking if anyone is there. The PC tag next to his name confirms he's a genuine beginner. The game now has 5 concurrent players, and one jokes that the game is booming. Kebop gives Noob the tutorial guide, and Noob thanks them, saying they're really kind and that he'll message them again after finishing the tutorial. 2 hours pass. Noob finally says he can't believe this is just the tutorial and that it's too hard, so he's gonna quit. One grows frustrated, saying players always give up in the end. To points out that the developers keep adding content but never consider lowering the difficulty. Payak agrees, saying he has no idea what the developers are thinking. One announces that he's logging off for the day and wishes everyone a good night. Kebop asks if he'll be back tomorrow. After a brief pause, one answers, probably. In that silence, Kebop feels that both To and Payak felt it too. They log out, saying it's time to return to real life and that their journey has come to an end. Kebop says he hoped they would join his stream, but he couldn't let go. Even as other veterans logged in less and less, he stayed behind alone, recording update videos so they could still enjoy the game together. He streamed day and night, waiting for his friends to return. Months passed. Eventually, the tutorial difficulty was drastically lowered, and the early game experience was improved. Alongside the existing zombies and fantasy monsters, new mutated creatures were introduced. Kebop welcomed the massive update, but his friends had already lost interest and never logged in again. In the end, the game was left with only one concurrent player, Kebop. He says the game is hopeless and that he might quit at this rate. Suddenly, someone contacts him, claiming to be from the game's operations team. Before making an announcement, they thank all the users who cherished survival life. Kebop is shocked and wonders if they were just waiting for him to give up. At that moment, a massive monster lets out a terrifying scream. Kebop says he wanted to defeat that monster with his friends before quitting, but it's too late now. He stops the recording and removes all of his gear. After that, he deletes his streaming account, his channel, and everything tied to the more than 5,500 hours he spent playing the game. However, he can't bring himself to throw away the hard drive filled with those memories, so he stuffs it into a storage closet. Only then does Kimbop, whose real name is finally revealed as Kong Sunung Ho, truly begin living his life. Known by the nickname the Burnout Chef, he now works at a restaurant selling, fittingly, kimbap. The reason his ID was Kimbop in the first place was simple. He has been running a snack shop for 3 years now, and business is doing quite well. The shop is located on the first floor of the house he inherited after losing his parents during his second year of high school. The place is called Sun Ho's Tasty Snacks. He calls out to customers, announcing that their food is ready. A woman yells back at him, commenting that business seems to be booming today. Her name is Mikiyoung. He's never managed to ask her last name, but she's a local hairdresser and a regular customer, and it's no secret that he finds her extremely pretty. She shows him something on her phone and asks if he's seen it. When he asks what it is, she explains that people are saying if you shout status window, one will appear and that kids have been talking about it nonstop. She says she tried it earlier, but nothing happened. He laughs, telling her there's no way something like that could actually work and teasing her for being too gullible. Later that night, he stretches out his hand and shouts, "Status window." First, nothing happens. He mutters that he knew it was too good to be true, until lightning suddenly surges and the window appears. Startled, he blurts out that it scared the hell out of him. Looking closer, he notices that he has no level or points, but his stats are visible, and his trait is listed as Open Private Portal. He feels like he's seen this before. Soon, he realizes it's the status window from Survival Life, though it's slightly different. The game never had a trade system, and he comments that this one seems pretty lame. Still, he decides to test it. When he opens the portal, it materializes right in front of him. He remarks that it's incredible and looks exactly like the labyrinth gate from the game. He wonders if this could really be the game system, but quickly dismisses the idea. If it were real, there would at least be news articles about Yoonjambi. Curious, he looks it up, and freezes when he finds that there actually is one. He starts panicking, telling himself the name could just be a coincidence, and that it's too early to jump to conclusions. But what if it's real? If so, there should be some kind of proof beyond just his portal. He forces himself to stop, realizing it's too dangerous to go in without a plan. After reconsidering, he takes a ladle and sticks it through the bottom of the portal to test what's on the other side. When he pulls it back and sees dirt, he concludes that the destination isn't a labyrinth at least. It could simply be some kind of warp to another place on Earth. He makes preparations and decides it's time to enter. Wearing a backpack filled with supplies, he steps through. On the other side, he's greeted by a breathtaking landscape and wonders if it's real. The weather feels cold, and with no phone signal, he assumes this must be a remote location that's difficult for people to reach. He pulls out a marker and begins drawing symbols on trees. Since there's no way to confirm where he is, he reasons that finding proof is the most important thing, and marking his path will help him return. As he ventures deeper into the forest, he complains about how massive it is and hopes anything will appear. Suddenly, a pair of eyes watches him from the trees. Something leaps past him, startling him badly. Turns out to be a valley deer. He recognizes the name immediately, and combined with the system window appearing, he realizes this place isn't Earth. The deer stares at him for a moment before running away. He admits the intensity of its gaze scared him, but it doesn't seem aggressive. Still, he hasn't found concrete proof of the apocalypse yet. If it had been stone monkeys or humped boars, it would be a different story, since valley deer never appeared in the game. Even so, from that moment on, he has a strong hunch that this space is closely connected to survival life. He forces himself to ignore the thought, wanting to deny that a disaster is coming for humanity. That hope doesn't last long. He soon comes across a golden tree bearing a sun apple. He plucks it, figures it should be safe, and takes a bite. The status window informs him that his stamina has slightly recovered, and a faint golden glow surrounds his body. He notes that the effect is identical to the sun apple juice sold in the in-game shop and laughs, saying that this basically confirms everything. He sits down, noticing goblin traces as well. Telling himself to accept reality, he admits that the end is coming. His sense of déjà vu has turned into certainty. He immediately exits the portal and begins preparing. The first thing he does is retrieve the hard drive he stored away and review his early game footage. He had streamed and recorded everything because he genuinely loved the game, and now he can't believe he has to use it like this. According to the game data, he knows the exact date the asteroid will hit. Checking the current date, he realizes there are only 32 days left until the apocalypse. Reviewing the footage again, he's reminded how unfriendly the game was, packed with frustrating mechanics. The worst of them all was the Iron Death disease, a phenomenon that caused all metal to crumble. It swept through areas infected with zombie spores about 5 hours later, instantly dragging human civilization back to the Stone Age. While the disease eventually subsided depending on the region, it took anywhere from 6 months to a year. For him, however, the Iron Death disease may be irrelevant. Thanks to his private portal trait, it's only a hypothesis, but he believes the phenomenon shouldn't be able to pass through the portal. After finishing his initial analysis, he uses his savings to buy every survival supply he can think of: weapons, food, tools, medicine, and everything needed to live independently. He browses online forums, wondering how everyone can be so carefree when they have status windows just like his. When morning comes, he buys even more supplies. On his way home, he purchases a 60-pound hunting bow. As he walks back, a thought crosses his mind. Maybe he's overreacting. If nothing happens, then it won't matter, and he'll just spend 2 or 3 years earning the money back. Still, when he gets home, he commits fully. He puts up a sign announcing that the shop will be temporarily closed for a few months due to remodeling. He's still unsure whether this is the right choice. It's a decision made almost overnight. Mikiaung calls out to him, asking if he's really shutting the shop down. He tells her that's not the case, that he's just remodeling. She comments that he must have made a lot of money. He replies that the shop is just old, but he has something important to take care of. He tells her that, if she'll excuse him, he needs to leave. She calls out for him to stop, but doesn't have the courage to finish what she was about to say and instead tells him she'll see him later. He wonders what she was trying to say. It was a moment where he could have easily asked, but he chose to stay silent instead. There were more serious things he needed to focus on. He opens the portal and steps back inside. He explains that his gameplay style has always been that of a planner, someone who carefully creates detailed strategies to overcome challenges. That's why, even among veterans, he lacked physical skill. The reason for this is simple. In the game, stats aren't gained by leveling up, but through the results of hunting and exploration. He sets up a target and draws back the bowstring, wondering if it will really work. He realizes that drawing the bow is much easier than he expected. He's watching a YouTube tutorial on how to use a bow, listening closely as the instructor explains. He readies himself, recalling how it felt to shoot back in the game, and releases his first arrow, hitting the target. He's shocked, wondering if he might have been Legolas in a past life because he can't believe he hit it on his first try. However, he quickly realizes he can only draw the string about 5 times at most before it starts tearing into his hands. Starting today, he decides he's going to go all in on strength training. After finishing the basic preparations, he moves on to the next stage. There are 2 things he needs to take care of. First, he needs to find out whether he can hunt monsters in his current state. Second, he needs to build a hideout where he can store his supplies. Of course, until the weapons and supplies he ordered arrive, he has no intention of doing anything reckless, like trying to overtake a nest or anything similar. He gets another sun apple and reminds himself that preparing for every possible situation is the reason he was able to remain a veteran in the game. He heads back to one of the markers and looks around, saying he's sure it was nearby. After some searching, he finds it and makes his way back to the goblin droppings. The reason he deliberately searched for goblin dung is simple. Goblins are monsters that normally live in groups, so finding a single pile is abnormal. The fact that it contains only seeds suggests the goblin hasn't been eating properly. There's a high chance it was exiled from its group. That's why he has to find it, no matter what. It's not often he gets the chance to test himself in a real fight. As night falls, he hears wolves howling and says that he must be getting closer to the valley. Soon, he spots a goblin near a river and notes that it looks identical to the ones he saw in the game. For reference, goblins mainly use spears and poison darts. They enjoy incapacitating their opponents with poison and then tormenting them, which is exactly why he chose a bow as his first weapon. He tells himself to stay calm. It's an old goblin, and because it was exiled, it might not be carrying a spear or poison dart. His hands begin to tremble, but he tells himself that if he stays calm, he can hunt it. He fires the arrow. The goblin hears the shot, turns, and blocks the attack with its arm, letting out a scream. He says he was aiming for the head, but he's relieved he managed to hit it at all. He knows he should press the advantage, but the goblin throws a rock that knocks the bow out of his hands. He says the goblin must be a seasoned veteran as well. He draws his blade, and the goblin pulls out its own crude knife. They charge at each other. Their blades clash. Sunung-ho pulls back before thrusting forward toward the goblin's head. The goblin ducks under the attack and counters, striking him in the leg. Sun-ho grits his teeth and tackles the goblin to the ground. He raises his knife and drives it straight into the goblin's chest. The goblin tries to push him off, but it's too weak. The life fades from its eyes. He gains 2 points. Panting heavily, he says he can't believe he actually did it. He then notices a small pouch on the ground containing guac powder and vegetable oil. In the game, combining the 2 creates an ointment, so he decides to try it. He tells himself he also needs to bury the body, not only so other goblins won't find it, but also to prevent it from turning into a bone creeper. He groans, thinking about how this reminds him of the mines back then. As he looks toward the river and notices the red trout, something clicks. He mutters that this is bad. His body begins shaking as he turns around and meets the gaze of a massive creature, the owl bear, staring straight at him. He realizes he's in serious trouble. A flashback plays. Sunung-ho greets everyone on one of his streams, saying he'll continue from where he left off after compiling a summary of the monsters that inhabit the forest. Viewers start complaining that it's boring, and he responds by saying he worked hard to prepare the material. A viewer named Bolong Man says he thinks it'll be fun. Sun-ho thanks him for the donation, and Bolong Man replies that it's nothing. Just the money he made gluing his eyes to $1,000 that day as his viewing fee. The banter continues, with a user named Dog constantly changing his username to fit the situation, which everyone finds amusing. Sunung-ho explains that last time they covered goblins and kobolds, emphasizing that bone creepers must be avoided at all costs. He says the most dangerous creatures in the forest are werewolves and owlbears. In particular, the presence of an owlbear means the monster ecosystem in the area is balanced. Looking back, he realizes those were good times. Bolong Man was always enthusiastic. Batman always managed to relate everything back to Bap, Korean food, and Dog's constant name changes always made him laugh. He begins explaining how to fight an owlbear, then stops. He wonders why he's thinking about past memories right now. Maybe this is what people mean when they say their life flashes before their eyes. But for him, it feels more like his old friends are telling him to snap out of it. He pinches his leg and forces himself to think. Owlbears tear apart anything they see when they're hungry. The fact that it's standing there means it isn't hungry. That means there's only one thing angering it, He's invaded its territory, where the red trout live. If that's the case, he needs to find a way out, but only one plan comes to mind. He widens his stance. His mind may still be that of Kimbap, but his body is just his own. Still, if he wants to live, he has to do this. He shouts, telling the owl bear to charge. The creature locks onto him. With an owl's head, its night vision is excellent, but it's weak to strong light. He memorized its patterns long ago. Now he just has to execute them. As it rushes toward him, he tells himself to trust his timing. The only way to create a strong light effect in this situation is to shine it directly into its eyes. He climbs up its arm, presses the flashlight right under its beak, and turns it on. The owl bear lets out a deafening scream as it's blinded. The next morning, his alarm starts ringing. He groans, saying his entire body aches, and turns it off, guessing he must have passed out the moment he lay down. As if fighting a goblin wasn't bad enough, he can't believe he also ran into an owl bear, and he seriously never wants to see one again. He realizes he hasn't eaten anything since before he entered the other world. As he tries to get up, he trips off the bed and crashes onto the floor, saying his legs have absolutely no strength left in them. Then he spots the sun apple inside his bag. He pulls it out and takes a big bite. Thanks to the sun apple's effect, his stamina begins to recover. He says he feels a little more alive now, and that it's time to finally fill his stomach. Later, he looks confused, wondering why Mikiaung is here. She says she came to eat and mentions that this place is her second favorite restaurant. He clarifies that he meant why she's sitting with him, and she replies that it's nice to have a meal buddy. She then asks if he tried the thing she mentioned before. He asks if she's talking about the status window. She confirms it and asks if he tried it. He says that now he understands why she stopped talking that day. She tells him she genuinely believes it's real, pointing out that cash went missing from a convenience store. Sun Ho immediately realizes it's obvious that she wants to know the truth. He tells her that he tried it, but unfortunately nothing appeared. Given the situation, his actions make complete sense. Not only is his trait not combat-oriented, but his abilities are also suited for solo play rather than teamwork. And in a world where safety isn't even guaranteed, revealing his hand would be no different from shouting, "Please come eat me." Still, the fact that Mikiaung keeps asking about awakening suggests she may have experienced something herself. She suddenly apologizes. He asks her why. She says there's something she lied about. He tells her she seems like a good person and that she doesn't have to explain it right now. There's still time. She can tell him later when she's ready. After that, he heads home. When he arrives, he sees packages being delivered in front of his house. He praises the delivery guys, calling them absolute legends, and thanks them for their hard work. What a Chad. He moves everything he'll need later up to the rooftop, and the items he needs immediately to the second floor. While doing so, he selects the equipment he'll use for today's operation. A gas mask, a fireproof suit, pepper spray, a fire axe, gasoline, a fire extinguisher, plumbing pipes, and a monocular. Today's mission is to secure a space that can serve as a hideout. No matter what, he has to lock one down. When he enters the other world, he says finding a suitable location wasn't difficult. He had already spotted a suspicious-looking area while searching for the old goblin. Peeking through the bushes, he finds it again and says it's absolutely perfect for a hideout. The only problem is that he doesn't know what kind of monster lives inside. As he stares at the cave entrance, he notices footprints and identifies them as belonging to kobolds. This actually makes him happy, as his plan works well against all low-tier monsters. He checks the wind direction and notes that since kobolds are nocturnal, they should still be asleep. For them, this plan is pure poison. He gathers firewood and places it near the cave entrance, then pours gasoline over it. As he's about to light it, some of the kobolds wake up and step outside. They spot him, and he greets them before grabbing his axe and charging straight in. Without a second of hesitation, he slices both of their throats, even cutting one of their heads clean off. He's shocked, saying he didn't think a one-hit kill was possible for him. His level increases, and he now has a total of 4 points. He decides he'll figure out the details later. Right now, he needs to act before the others wake up. He drops his lighter onto the firewood. He explains that in the game, all low-tier monsters shared one weakness: sudden phenomena. While burning them directly would be more effective than smoking them out, as the new tenant, that would make cleanup a nightmare. So the strategy he chose was simple: throw them into confusion first. When they rushed outside to catch their breath, he'd wipe them out in one sweep. He expected at least 5 to come out, since a cobalt pack usually consists of 7, but fewer appear. That means there should be 3 remaining after these are dealt with. They spot him and charge straight toward him. He pulls back his axe and swings, sending one of them flying. The other leaps at him through the air, but he was ready for this. He sprays it with pepper spray, causing it to scream and writhe on the ground. He finishes it by chopping its head off. Walking toward the final cobalt, he notes that the leader is cowering in fear. He calls it pathetic, but says he'll make good use of its hideout before smashing its brains in. He removes his mask, saying he dealt with them pretty easily. That said, with no stamina left, it's incredibly exhausting. Just like in the game, the debuff from exhaustion kicks in. The fact that leveling up doesn't grant stat points makes things even rougher. Still, leveling up unlocks useful systems. Today's haul is huge, and more importantly, he now has a secure space that belongs exclusively to him. Of course, he still needs to clean out the nest first. He begins preparing it, saying that the very first thing he did was clean. The cave is about 15 meters deep, slightly small for a shelter, but absolutely filthy. Maybe because he had just fought such an intense battle, the cleaning felt like the hardest work he'd ever done. He's genuinely disgusted by the kobold's behavior. Still, now that he has a safe space in the other world, he can freely use the portal's properties. This makes everything much easier, since he connects it directly to his bathroom. Even so, the work is so exhausting that he feels like he might pass out. The most surprising discovery he makes while traveling between dimensions is that he can fix the coordinates of both the real world and the other world. That means objects can interact across them. Even while straddling the boundary, he's able to pull a hose from his bathroom straight into the cave and wash it down thoroughly. After cleaning, he says it looks pretty decent, though he'll still need to scrub out the bloodstains and pour concrete on the floor so he can store supplies more easily. The mortar will take a few days to cure, and the sandwich panels will too. That's when he notices some stones and recognizes them as luminous stones and ignition stones. These are essential starter items in the game, making this place a complete gold mine. As soon as construction is finished, he plans to start mining immediately. The next day, with 29 days remaining until the apocalypse, his muscles ache violently. He says he must have seriously overdone it. There isn't a single part of his body that doesn't hurt. He looks down at his arm and notices several small wounds, wondering when he even got them. He says they're not serious enough to waste a sun apple on, though. Still, he has other materials available, so he decides to make an ointment instead. The process is very simple. He mixes the powder and vegetable oil in a 1-to-1 ratio and stirs it until it sets. Once the ointment is finished, the status window notifies him that it will slightly heal wounds. He remarks that, for someone with kitchen experience, this is incredibly easy. He begins applying it to his injuries and notes that it actually does feel like it's healing. Even so, he says it would be a bit much if it's going to be like this every single time. To increase his stats, he has no choice but to keep doing what he's been doing. But at this rate, he feels like he might die before the disaster even begins. He considers switching to a slingshot, which is smaller than a bow but relies heavily on terrain. He also thinks about using a gun, since that would allow him to instantly take down a few enemies at the start of a fight. Then another thought crosses his mind. There's one thing he remembers that isn't a main part of the game's story. It's just background lore, but maybe it could happen in reality as well. Regardless, it isn't useless information. If the same precursor events from the backstory occur, it could be beneficial in many ways, making it worth looking into. After forming a plan, he heads up to the rooftop to prepare for construction. He's genuinely shocked to see that the delivery guy managed to haul all of that stuff up to the rooftop in a single night, calling him the real goat of the series. Luckily, all the bags he ordered are there, which makes the work much easier. He then goes down to the first floor to retrieve the rest of the items he ordered. As he's about to move the packages inside, Mikiaon calls out to him, saying she's glad she ran into him. He wonders if they've gotten closer, since she's dropped formalities, and notes that he's been seeing her quite often lately. She says she's been stopping by every day to eat tekkbokki. He laughs and apologizes, explaining that he's been busy lately with remodeling the shop. She says he definitely looks like it. When he asks what she means, she explains that he used to come in for a haircut every 3 months. He looks at his hair and realizes it's grown long enough that he's had to tie it up. She asks if he wants a haircut right now. He says he needed one anyway, so it works out, and tells her he'd love one. They head to her shop, where she sits him down and asks how he wants it cut today. He He tells her to shave it all off. She asks why, and he replies that he wants a fresh start. She says that if that's the case, she'll make it look as good as possible, adding that his shoulders seem broader too. He says he started working out recently and guesses it's starting to show. She then mentions that she heard something, that the status window is connected to survival life. He says that's interesting. She adds that awakeners are supposedly people who have played the game at least once. He asks if that's really true and where she heard it from, but before she can answer, the bell rings as someone enters the shop. It's a man with a snake tattoo on his arm named INH. She asks why he's here at this hour, and he says he came to share more intel. Sunho recalls having fought this guy in real life before because he was extremely loud, and he wonders if this pushy bastard is really her source. INH tells her that someone seems to be trying to monopolize information, deleting all his videos and disappearing. She asks if he's serious. Sunho says that sounds familiar. INH adds that his group is currently trying to figure out where the guy lives. She points out that this sounds illegal, while Sunho continues wondering who they're talking about. INH says they're not in a position to be picky, and that catching that Kimbap son of a bitch and forcing him to share information would be for the public good. She insists that it's still too much. Sunho realizes that from the very beginning, they've been actively hunting him down. INH suddenly grabs her hand and tells her she needs to join their team. She tells him not yet. Sunho says this is ridiculous. He deleted everything because he was disillusioned, not because he wanted to monopolize information. He didn't even have time to think about that. INH yanks the scissors out of her hand and grabs her by the shoulder, calling her frustrating and saying it's just like playing the game. Sunung-ho calls him disgusting for acting like he knows everything. INH snaps back that if that bastard had just uploaded his information, none of this would have been necessary. Sunho wonders why INH is talking as if he's already caught him. INH tells her once again that he can't wait much longer. Sunho wonders if the community really is flooded with bad rumors about him, and if that's the case, maybe he should be the one to explain the information himself. INH tells her to make a decision. Sunho steps in, saying he doesn't know what INH is talking about, but they can talk about it later. INH demands to know who he thinks he is. Sunho gets right in his face and tells him to leave while he's still being polite, unless he wants to be humiliated again like last time. INH falters, clearly intimidated, and says it looks like today just isn't his day. He leaves. Mikiaung tells him goodbye and lets out a sigh of relief once he's gone. Sunung-ho suggests they exchange numbers just in case, since that guy is bad news. Back at home, he sets construction aside for the moment. After shaving, he turns on his computer and looks himself up on the forum. He finds that people are desperately trying to identify him in real life, even going as far as sending death threats. The person who leaked the important intel early is also receiving hate, but he notices an ID that looks like the one belonging to the guy who was talking to Mikiaung. Sunho calls him insane, wondering if he really went through the trouble of making a verified account just to post this stuff. The posts are filled with curses directed at him, and there are even claims that he's trying to seduce Mikiaung. Disgusted, Sunho calls him scum and shuts off the computer. He isn't mentally broken, he's simply sick of people. Strangely, his thoughts feel clearer than before. He opens the portal and spends the next 2 days completely immersed in working on the hideout. He mines stone with a pickaxe to blow off steam, mixes mortar with water, and spreads it evenly across the floor. Once the work is finished, he steps outside to let the mortar dry. As he watches the moon rise, a thought comes to him. An eye for an eye, injustice for injustice. He's not a hero, and he doesn't need a grand mission. In the end, all he needs to do is survive. The moment he turns around after making that resolution, he hears a familiar sound. He turns back, hoping he's mistaken. It's a bone creeper. He curses, unable to believe the son of a bitch showed up now, especially when his mood is already absolute trash. The creature's jaw begins clattering louder and louder until there's a massive explosion. After the blast, Sunho is lying on the ground. His hand twitches as he suddenly jolts awake, confused about what happened. Then he remembers the bone creeper exploded. But the question remains, how did he survive? So he replays everything in his head. When he confirmed the bone creeper's appearance, it was already on the verge of exploding. He barely managed to create distance, and that's probably the only reason he's still alive, but he didn't come out unscathed. When he looks at his arms and shoulders, he sees bone fragments embedded all over them. He opens his status window and sees that his level and points have increased, meaning the system recognized it as a defeat, just like in the game. As he stares at his stats, his vision blurs for a moment, and he mutters that this isn't good. He immediately opens the portal and heads home, starting treatment right away. He pulls out the bone fragments and applies the ointment. After that, he quickly wraps himself in bandages, but the moment he finishes, he collapses onto the couch and passes out completely. He wakes up to sunlight and groans, saying that at this rate he's going to die early. He realizes he should have checked whether the first aid actually worked before falling asleep. When he checks his status window, he sees that his stats have increased, though they're still lower than his usual baseline. Still, it looks like the treatment worked, which is a relief. He then wonders where the bone creeper suddenly came from. The forest is massive, so something appearing out of nowhere isn't that strange, but he figures this means he should raise his perception stat, which improves detection abilities. In the game, there were 2 ways to increase stats. The first was repeatedly performing certain actions to gain experience. The second was obtaining stat-boosting items. However, the game was extremely hardcore. To obtain items with stats, you had to defeat monsters stronger than yourself or monsters tied to special events. And even then, it was pure RNG. When he farmed the same monsters repeatedly, he almost never got what he wanted. He recalls that once, after defeating a high-tier monster, he obtained a skill called Wild Instinct. But of course, it didn't suit him at all. Regardless, what matters now is figuring out how to obtain items in his current situation. To do that, he decides to revisit the background story he remembered earlier. The background story details various phenomena that occurred before the meteor fell. In other words, if things go well, there's a chance to acquire powerful items before the apocalypse even begins. Of course, that only applies if those phenomena actually occur in reality, and if strong monsters appear as well. He checks the history and carefully rereads the background story. After going through it thoroughly, he learns that a total of 3 precursor events are supposed to occur. The last one involves a Russian ship, and before that comes the hobgoblins. There's barely any information on the hobgoblin event, but the very first phenomenon involves discovering an orc's corpse on a mountain. He calculates the timing. If he wants to arrive in time, and since it happens on the afternoon of the 26th, he'll need to get there on the morning of the 25th. He sits up abruptly, saying he needs to prepare immediately. At that moment, Mikiaung calls him. He wonders why she's calling at this hour. They meet at a cafe where she asks if he's okay. He asks why she's worried. She says it's because of his expression, and also because he's wearing long sleeves and pants. He replies that he just isn't bothered much by the heat, but admits it's scary how sharp she is, joking that a woman's intuition is terrifying. She asks if it might be because his haircut was interrupted. He says that's not it either. She sighs in relief and admits she was pretty scared. Sunung-ho laughs and says it's true that he hates that bastard. Last winter, the guy caused trouble after illegally modifying his truck and picked fights with elderly people who looked weak. He calls him a complete asshole. She's shocked and says she had no idea he was that kind of person. Sun-ho explains that she wouldn't know, since it always happened early in the morning. Then he asks her to get to the point. Why did she call him? She says that if it's okay, she needs his ear for a moment. Leaning in, she whispers that she's an awakened. He wonders why she's telling him this and decides to play along, saying he's jealous since he hasn't awakened yet. She apologizes, saying she felt bad about lying. He tells her it's fine, that he never misunderstood her because he knows what kind of person she is. He says he's glad she's been consistently sharing information and talking to him. Thanks to her, he feels a bit better, even if it's hard to explain. He admits he's been on edge because of the remodeling, but he's glad he came to talk to her. That said, he tells her he's going to focus on studying survival life for now. He says he'll see her next time. He reflects that it's good to meet people with decent character, and that talking to her genuinely makes him feel better. After that, he goes online and purchases a drone to scout the forest, as well as renting a car for the trip. He lies down, saying he wants to get some proper sleep to be in peak condition. The next day, as soon as dawn breaks, he begins preparing materials to hunt the orc. Crushing ignition stone requires extreme caution. If struck incorrectly, sparks will burst out. Then there's the luminous stone, which releases intense light. Even through a welding mask, it stings his eyes, but it's reliable, so he endures it. After completing the basic setup for catching an orc, he mixes sugar, gasoline, and various organic solvents with a hardening agent, combining them with powdered ignition stone and resin. He leaves the finished product on a desk inside his shelter, then returns to reality. He checks the rental car storage and comments that renting a car was a great idea as he loads all his equipment into it. Sitting in the driver's seat, he says it's time to go hunt an orc. Before midnight, he finally arrives at the campground parking lot. He spends the remaining time doing image training and checking his gear. Once the next day begins, it's time for the full-scale search. After 2 hours of climbing the mountain and scouting the area, the rain begins to fall harder. On top of that, thick mist rolls in, severely limiting visibility. He wonders where the orcs are supposed to appear. He checks around the campground and concludes that, as expected, the precursor phenomenon just isn't happening. Then he hears it, an orc screaming. He turns, realizing that the phenomenon has actually begun. Unlike the orcs in the game, this one is a red orc, meaning it will drop a skill. He tells himself to stay calm as he lights a flare. If he sticks to his plan, he knows he can take it down. The strategy he devised is simple. First, he uses the orc's aggression to draw its attention. When the orc becomes fixated on the flare and attacks it, he'll take that moment, when its movement stops, to rush in. He opens his portal and slides underneath it, reaching beneath his coat. As his head passes into the portal, he pulls out a homemade flashbang and detonates it, completely blinding the orc while he remains safely inside the portal. He estimates it'll take about 20 seconds for the orc's vision to recover. From that point on, it's a race against time. He lights the fuse of another item within the portal world. His first objective is to stab the orc side while it's disoriented, limiting its movement. He does exactly that. The orc screams and swings wildly toward him. He ducks under the attack and drives his blade into its Achilles tendon. The orc lets out a howl of pain and collapses to its knees. Once the orc is at eye level, it's time for the final step. He reaches into the portal and pulls out the fuse he lit earlier, saying that he needs to shove this straight into its mouth. As he does, there's a massive explosion, and he's blasted backward. He says that even an orc shouldn't be able to survive that, but it slams into him anyway, sending him rolling across the ground. He can't believe he let his guard down like an idiot. He looks up and sees the orc engulfed in flames, but his vision starts to blur. He wonders if this is how he's going to die. Then he hears the level up sound. His level jumps by 3, he gains 10 points, and acquires the skill Will to Survive. He mutters that he's really not built for this kind of stuff, then looks around, wondering where the drops are. He spots something and equips it. It turns out to be a watch that grants +2 perception. He says it was hard to find because of the rain, which sucks. The watch is slightly deformed, but the perception bonus is great. Now, though, he doesn't know what to do about the orc's body. The incident is definitely under embargo, but releasing this information feels like the right thing to do. Still, he's pessimistic. If what Mikyang said before is true, then at least several thousand people have already awakened. And even if only a small portion of them are people like INH, that's more than enough to collapse systems and laws for personal gain and trigger riots. The biggest problem is that if he leaves the orc here, it'll turn into a bone creeper and start harming people as soon as tomorrow. He pauses, wondering why he never considered that he himself might not become a zombie. Even as an awakened, there's no guarantee he wouldn't turn if infected by the spores. He struggles with what the right choice is and can't bring himself to decide on the spot. But one thing is certain. Even for the few who will survive, the world needs to reach an orderly end. He starts digging a hole, wondering how deep it needs to be. He also notes that if his body were in better condition, this wouldn't be nearly as hard. Because of his exhaustion, Will to Survive activates. His combat will, stamina regeneration, health regeneration, and perception all increase dramatically. He says he just needs to finish this quickly, so he has no choice but to move as fast as he can. At first glance, the skill seems incredibly overpowered, but once the effect wears off, he immediately enters the portal. He rushes to his car and drives away, saying his body will need time before it can move properly again. When he finally makes it home, he looks up at the sky and hopes everything worked out. According to the plan, he should have already started building the defensive line, but at least the remnants of the orc have been erased. By now, it's too late to start anything else today. He wonders if he should check the community and take a look at the items he got earlier. He opens a box and finds a large assortment of weapons and tools, getting excited. Of course, in reality, he can only use them as something like an improvised Indian war club for now, but since they're usable, it's not bad. However, he notices that a few items are missing and wonders what happened. Digging further into the box, he finds a note explaining that they couldn't make it through customs. There's a knock at the door. He assumes it's another delivery and tells them to just leave it there. The knocking continues and he wonders why they're still knocking. He asks if they didn't hear him and opens the door, only to find Mikiaung standing there. She apologizes and says it's been a while since they last met, and she wanted to talk to him today. If it's okay with him, she also brought some food so they could eat together. A little later, she's about to sit down, and he says he can't believe she's actually in his house. While it feels unbelievable, he wonders if this could count as them getting closer. She tells him to hurry up and eat, and he replies, "Of course," before asking what she wanted to talk about. She says that since he mentioned he was studying the game last time, she thought they could share information. He thinks to himself that the apocalypse is right around the corner, so it's strange he even considered this as getting closer, but still, sharing information with her is the right thing to do. In an apocalypse, you need good people. After they finish eating, she says she'll quickly take out the trash, and he says he'll get a few things ready. While she's gone, he brings out his laptop and deletes his search history. There's no better way to share information while hiding the fact that he's an awakened than through the community. He starts with a detailed explanation of the disease. He tells her that moving in groups of 6 or more increases the chance of being detected by zombies and monsters, and that perception stats are critical for survival. She asks if that means perception is the most important stat compared to the others. He says that's right, after all, it's a survival game. He then tells her he'll show her what he found next. She mentions that, just like he said, it looks like INH was right and Kimbop is receiving a lot of hate. He says he can see that too. She asks why he thinks Kimbop isn't sharing information. Sunho says he's not sure, since he's never played the game, and asks what she thinks. She replies that she honestly understands it. Everyone has their own reasons and circumstances that make sense to them. She brings up INH again and says she turned down his offer. Sunho asks why. She hands him her phone, and he hears a recording of them discussing kidnapping her. Sunung-ho gets furious and says that when a real catastrophe hits and the rule of law collapses, many people will reveal their true nature, which means she can't trust anyone. She asks what about him, then says she wants to form a party with him. He's left speechless and admits that he can't respond easily. One of his goals is to reach level 10 before the tutorial ends and unlock the shop, and that's where the problem lies. The game's system scales monster tiers based on level, meaning that if she traveled with him, she'd almost certainly die a meaningless death. He tells her he appreciates the offer, but says he might turn into a zombie. She replies that she thinks it would still be fine. To prove it, she teleports across the house. She explains that her trait is called Blink, and she'll dodge before he ever tries to bite her. He tells her that's not something she should show other people. She says she showed him because it's him, and also as a sign of trust. Even if they can't be a party, she wants them to cooperate, at least as long as they both survive without turning into zombies. Back in the other world, Sunung-ho says building the fence wasn't difficult. First, he drives the support posts into the ground. Then he wraps the barbed wire around them once or twice and secures it tightly. After that, he installs infrared sensors in several spots. Once everything is done, he says it looks pretty cool and deserves at least more than 1 point in the handiwork skill. Now that the mortar work is finished and the defensive line is complete, it's time to move the packages inside. He finishes moving everything and says that once he divides the interior using sandwich panels, the internal setup will be nearly complete. He suddenly lets out a nasty sneeze, "Blow your damn nose," and remarks that, as expected, this world is cold. Feels like late autumn. Since he'll soon have to sleep here, he needs to prepare for that too. While he's at it, instead of using blackout curtains at the entrance, he should build a proper door. He laughs at himself, saying it feels like his to-do list just keeps getting longer. He stopped by a nearby carpentry workshop to request custom work and purchase various items. On his way back, he walked for 5 hours as part of his pre-disease checklist, identifying locations he would need to loot later. He mentally made a list saying that after the hardware store, he would go to the pharmacy and then the motorcycle shop. Someone suddenly called out to him, and Sunho recognized the voice, calling the man Hun-jun. He is a gym owner, divorced, with a young daughter, and his nickname is Protein Master. Sunho asks if something is wrong, saying Hun-jun looks terrible. Hun-jun replies that he has a lot going on, then asks Sunho if he started working out again. He says it looks like the muscle memory Sunho built before is coming back. Sunho says he's been using his body a lot recently because of the remodeling and asks what's going on with him. Hun-jun says he thinks the world is actually ending. Sunho asks if he heard that too, And Hunjun says yes, explaining that one of his gym members told him about status windows and zombies and asked if he believed it. Sunho says he's not sure. Hunjun says he didn't believe it at first either, but then the guy told him to watch closely and started levitating. Sunung-ho asks if it's really real, and Hunjun says he saw it with his own eyes. That was 100% a superpower. Sunung-ho says he hasn't awakened yet, and Hunjun says neither has he. Hunjun then says the guy told him he was heading to a broadcasting station to hit it big. Sunung-ho asks how his train of thought jumped to that. Hunjun says he has no idea, but the guy already has a meeting scheduled. Sunho sits down beside him and asks whether awakened people will soon be known to the general public. Hunjun says there's something even crazier. Sunho asks what? Hunjun replies, the shootout. Sunho asks what he means by a shootout. Hunjun asks if Sunho really didn't watch the news that morning. Sunho says he was busy. Hunjun says that makes sense and tells him to check the board. Turns out someone reported witnessing a shootout, but afterward the media was completely controlled and everything related to it was deleted. Sunho says that's insane. Hunjun says he personally watched the news being deleted in real time. Sunho asks where the follow-up reporting is. Hunjun says the news claimed it was a shooting incident caused by a deserter. But who knows? It's not something that would normally warrant breaking news, yet the entire area is sealed off by the military and police, meaning something is being hidden. Sunho suddenly stands up, saying he just remembered something he needs to do and that he'll visit next time. Hunjun tells him that if he wants to hear the rest, he should bring protein powder next time. After returning home, Sunho spends a long time organizing his thoughts. The shootout happened the day after the orc incident ended, and the perfectly coordinated media response means the government already knew. But how? Hardly anyone should know the exact timing of the first event. He buried the orc in the other dimension because he wanted a controlled apocalypse. Yet now a shootout happened out of nowhere. It might be excessive speculation, but what if someone shared information with the government early and planned to act starting with the first event? And what if that person, unlike him, didn't have an offensive trait and therefore didn't step onto the front line? He can't be sure who it is, but what he knows for certain is that someone is controlling things behind the government. Sunho narrows it down to the game's creator and 3 veteran players. He doesn't need to think about it much. He rules out the creator, though he doesn't know how they could have done it. Still, the fact that the game is becoming reality means the ones who built the world and the system are the most likely villains. Besides, if the creator were backed by the government, they would never have allowed him to kill an orc. For now, the 3 veterans he played with are the most likely suspects. He wonders if it's survivor number 1. If his theory is correct, then he doesn't need to share information with the government himself. He says that people act differently in games than in real life, so he doesn't know if the real survivor 1 would be the same person he knew, but he does miss his friends. He decides to trust them for now. And it's not like sharing information would stop a catastrophe anyway. 2 days later, he now has real bunker doors installed and a large stockpile of food prepared. He's built a food storage area and an armory and is now waiting for the generator. For Phase 2, he plans to install steel logistics trays and drill through the wall with a hammer drill. However, there's far less space than he expected. The basement waterproofing is finished since he worked on it gradually, but until it fully cures, he can't store anything down there. He'll need to figure out the rest during Phase 2 construction. There's still something important left to do. He launches the drone and says he knew the area was big, but this is basically Amazon-level scale. Drones are overpowered, there's no risk of being ambushed while exploring, real-time mapping is easy, and it's honestly GOAT. After admiring it for a moment, he sets the shelter as the center point and begins full-scale terrain exploration. He learns there are perpetual snowfields in the northwest and an ocean to the south. The ocean has no monsters and plenty of prey, so he should go there and set up fish traps. After finishing the terrain scouting, he examines the valley to study the ecosystems around the shelter. Thankfully, there are no more owl bears. He spots the place where he originally encountered the owl bear, but the corpse is gone. He wonders if the owl bear ate it, since the bone creeper he saw wasn't the goblin. Based on the footprints, it's too early to draw conclusions. Some of them are goblin tracks, which makes the situation suspicious. The distance between the valley and the shelter is about 1.5 kilometers, which might mean the shelter is more dangerous than he thought. Concluding that goblins are nearby, he presses the return to home button, since he can't afford to lose his golden treasure. After the return flight, he spreads out the map and marks where the animals are. He says this is a rough map of the area around his base. Now he needs to check each area himself, since that's the only way to get detailed information. Starting with the swamp, he plans to see whether farming is possible. His phone suddenly starts ringing, and he recognizes it as the infrared detectors outside. He says, "Speak of the devil." Looking at a cluster of goblin tracks, he says they have no manners. It doesn't look like a full group, probably 6 to 8 out hunting. They came straight to him on foot. He wonders if his increased perception stat is the reason, since every sound feels louder than usual and he was able to detect them while hiding. They appear to be fighting over food, and there's a leader among them. Sunho says this is the perfect ambush angle. He draws his bow and fires his first shot, hitting the leader directly in the forehead and killing it instantly. The remaining goblins panic and begin screaming. Amid the confusion, Sunho takes the opportunity to fire again, killing another one. The rest turn and charge toward the direction the arrow came from. As they get close to the bushes, he readies his fire axe and swings, cutting one of their throats and killing it. Leaving the axe lodged in its neck, he draws his blade and quickly finishes off another one. He then pulls out a machete, and seeing that there are 4 left, he asks them what they plan to do. They fire poison darts, but the darts bounce off his armor. He remarks that they're being rude when someone is talking. 3 of them rush him but don't attack. Instead, they surround him. He realizes that melee must be their last resort since the poison didn't work, and that's perfect for him. He reaches into his pocket and throws something onto the ground. A blinding light flashes, causing all of them to drop to their knees, coughing and spitting. He says the status effect landed properly. Now it's time to finish it. In an instant, he cuts off all 4 of their heads with lightning speed. He levels up to level 4 and gains 16 points. He says he only attempted it because they were weakened by confusion, but he's still surprised that it worked. A little later, Sunung-ho comments that this is exhausting, but he finds it amusing that his will to survive skill didn't activate during combat, but instead while he was digging. He notes how absurdly efficient the skill actually is. Even so, the activation wasn't wasted. Unlike with the orc, his health only dropped slightly, and he was able to confirm that the recoil isn't severe. He finishes burying all the corpses and says he should check his loot and find some fruit to restore his health. He notes that he's never seen it before it was ground into powder. Judging by the amount of vegetable oil present, there might be a nearby location where it can be harvested. He decides to check the boss's pouch and is shocked by what he finds: a toad. He wonders why it would be carrying a living one instead of a dead one. He sniffs it and says he can tell from the smell of the green liquid oozing from it that this is the paralysis poison goblins use. He says he absolutely has to raise it. More than anything, it's cute. And being able to extract paralysis poison means he'll have chances to raise his poison resistance, while also making hunting easier. He names it Jadak and tells it he'll give it plenty of food. A status window appears, stating that he has named the toad. Due to its sleeping state, he has forcibly succeeded in empathizing with it, and it is now considered his property. He says this is insane because he doesn't remember anything like this existing in the game. He suggests it might be a hidden gimmick added because this is reality now, like his portal gate. Maybe there was an update during the week he wasn't logged in. But that doesn't make sense because who would update the game right before shutting down the servers? He tells himself to stop thinking about it for now and continue exploring. He moves back and forth through the gate, reorganizing, until he finally heads out to explore the surroundings. He discovers a spring that the drone couldn't detect and says it's really beautiful. He scoops up some water with a ladle, saying he was worried, but it turns out to be normal water. This solves the problem of finding drinking water nearby, meaning he doesn't need to rely on the swamp. Just as he expected, there are other items as well: vegetable oil and the fruit he found earlier. He gathers all the fruit and harvests an appropriate amount of vegetable oil, but deliberately leaves a good portion behind. He places markers everywhere so he won't forget the route to this location, then heads back. The next day, we hear him cheering Jadak on, telling it to open its mouth as he feeds it. Jadak munches happily, and Sunho says he's decided to raise it on the 2nd floor for now. Toads live best in environments between 18 and 25 degrees Celsius, and if he left it in the hideout without proper heating, it would probably die. Jadak spits some poison into a cup, and Sunho calls it cute. He says that aside from taking care of Jadak, he still has many things to do. Among them, the task that took the longest was making ointment. No matter how he looks at it, he made far too much. He can't give it to Mikiang, who isn't awakened, and he doesn't know what to do with it. After thinking it over, he decides he can give some to Hun-jun. We see Hun-jun chugging a protein shake, saying that, as expected, the ones Sunung-ho makes are the best. Sun-ho laughs and says he knows he's a little late. Hun-jun tells him it's fine, since he honestly expected him the next day and was a bit disappointed. Sun-ho says that even though he's late, he didn't come empty-handed. Hun-jun laughs, saying he didn't expect an entire container of protein, then asks what the ointment is for. Sun-ho says he bought too much and that it's good for treating wounds. Hun-jun asks if he's running some MLM nonsense. Sun-ho says of course not. Hun-jun thanks him for also sending information related to the game. Sunung-ho says he's the one who should be grateful. If it weren't for Hun-jun, he wouldn't have known about the shooting incident. He comments that the gym is unusually quiet. Hun-jun explains that everyone went to make plans. Sun-ho asks what he means, and Hun-jun says the guy who went to the broadcasting station appears to have spread information to the members before leaving. At their request, they decided to use the gym as a base. Sun-ho asks how many people will be staying there. Hun-jun says 20. Sun-ho asks if he read the information properly, since more than 6 people is dangerous. Hun-jun says they don't have a choice, they have to try. They're all members and he can't abandon them. Sun-ho remarks that, as expected, Hun-jun is loyal. Hun-jun asks what Sun-ho plans to do. Sun-ho says he'll think about it more. Hun-jun tells him that since he's a non-awakened, if he doesn't have anywhere else to go, he can come here. Suddenly, they hear a scream outside. Sun-ho reacts first, telling Hun-jun to let him take a look. He opens the window and looks down, shocked by what he sees. Mikiang lying there. She slowly opens her eyes, and Sun-ho asks if she's conscious. She asks why he's there, and he says that's what he wants to ask her. He asks if she remembers anything. She says she doesn't remember clearly, only that someone suddenly attacked her. Hun-jun gets angry and tells Sun-ho to stay with her. Sun-ho says they should figure things out first. We also learn that Mikiang used to go to the gym with Sun-ho. Hun-jun says he'll check the surrounding area. While Sun-ho is annoyed, he asks Mikiang if she remembers anything about her attacker. She says she doesn't. Everything suddenly went dark. She knows the explanation sounds strange, but it wasn't like someone covered her eyes. It just went dark. Sun-ho gets frustrated and asks if they already started moving. He tells her that if anything like this happens again, she needs to use Blink immediately. She asks if he knows something. He tells her she must use it. He'll also send her self-defense equipment and tells her to make sure she carries it. From now on, she needs to be extremely careful. Sun-ho explains that for a long time there was a famous meme saying that if 5 people gather, one of them is trash. That's because trolls exist everywhere, especially in games where there's no interface beyond patch notes. In those environments, it was even worse. Trolls would join teams while pretending to be normal users, then lure parties into monster-infested areas and wipe them out. They would approach newbies while acting kind, then kill them and steal their items. They also committed various strange actions, such as deliberately creating conflicts between parties to make them fight each other. When you combine the number of trolls with how unpopular the game already was, they played a major role in causing it to completely fail. Of course, one of the reasons the number of users dropped to 4 was because the remaining players severely disciplined the few trolls left. If it seems sudden that he's explaining all this, it's because now is the perfect time for trolls to run rampant. He's explaining this to someone while summarizing the information he's gathered so far. After the shootout, the Awakener communities became integrated. They weren't just sharing information anymore, they were also plotting schemes. There were even people selling his videos. He recognizes one of them immediately, saying that bastard was definitely a troll named Dao Jason. The guy claims he's selling footage of Sun-ho carrying him, but Sun-ho says he never carried anyone. He thinks the guy is probably baiting people using spliced footage, though he admits it's oddly impressive. He wonders how someone even comes up with this kind of nonsense. He concludes that the only way to fight back against people like that is to increase his training time. For 13 days, whenever he had free time, he consistently studied weapon usage and real combat techniques on YouTube. Up to this point, however, everything he's dealt with has focused on fighting monsters, including defending the hideout. Many weapons and strategies didn't account for the disease at all. Starting today, he decides to choose a main weapon that can still be used if the disease spreads, something suitable for both anti-personnel combat and monster extermination. He begins sorting through all his equipment and realizes that when all conditions are considered, there are almost no weapons he can realistically use. He decides to test the slingshot first, since it has high utility in many situations. He aims at a target and fires, but the projectile simply bounces off the side. He notes that the beads lack serious power. Eventually, the only option left is the Indian War Club. Once the disease is taken into account, the logic becomes simple. The easiest way to deal with zombies is to crush the spores lodged inside the skull using a blunt weapon. The first item he plans to buy from the level 10 shop is a blunt weapon called the Ebonywood Club, so he needs to raise his proficiency. However, he's unsure whether it's effective against people as well. The situation feels too ambiguous. If he encounters a psychic awakener, he wouldn't even be able to lift a finger. Still, he won't hesitate because in survival life, killing a human granted 50 points. He closes his eyes and begins imagery training. He recalls the murderer system, where players registered as murderers were forced into death matches with nearby users. While this system prevented rampant abuse, there were still plenty of people who killed others for points, even if it came with demerits. He tells himself that people like that deserve zero mercy. He snaps out of it, panting as he stares at the training dummy. Even so, he decides it's best to avoid those kinds of encounters until he finishes farming items and skills. While he's at it, he plans to dismantle the store entirely and install a detector on the second floor. Suddenly, he hears howling and wonders why he's hearing a wolf at this hour. After thinking about it, he assumes one may have been injured near his hideout. A little later, wearing protective gear, he approaches and sees that the wolf is large enough to ride. It's a gray wolf. Its breathing has already stopped. More importantly, it died near his hideout. He doesn't know whether it was a stray wolf or one that came down after being attacked. To learn more, he decides to inspect its wounds. As he does, something suddenly leaps out of the bushes behind him and strikes his back. He realizes that what hit him is the wolf's cub. He doesn't know what to do. He can't forcibly separate a cub behaving like this, but he still needs to bury the mother quickly. If the wolf was a monster, it will become a bone creeper. If not, it could attract other monsters. He digs a massive hole and looks down into it, joking that he can almost see China. The cub reminds him of his younger self, and he's reminded of his childhood dog, Munchie. He picks up the cub, lets it bite his neck, and tells it that it needs to listen carefully. He explains that its mother will be sleeping here. He promises to build a small dog hole in the hideout so it can visit whenever it misses her. He also promises to make sure it doesn't starve until it's fully grown. In return, the cub will help him with its sense of smell. He waves a treat after giving the cub a bite and asks whether it's going to come with him or not. The cub gets excited, and Sunung-ho says that must be a yes. He names it Dingo and tells it he'll be counting on it. A status window appears, stating that he has successfully named the wolf and communicated with it. The wolf is now considered his property. Later, Sunho says in one word that his kid is a genius. He tells Dingo to do it again just like he taught him. He trains it to shake hands, turn around, sit, lie down, and stay quiet. He then tells it to wait, backs away, pulls out a treat, and throws it into the air, telling Dingo to jump. Dingo runs onto a nearby box, jumps off it, and snatches the bone out of the air. Sunho says it must be because it's a creature from another world, and it's also excellent at scent tracking. He calls it the best blessing he's received so far. He picks it up and kisses it, saying that at this rate it'll grow too big for that. He then receives a phone call from Hyunjin. Sunung-ho notes that it's unusual for him to call first. Hyunjin tells him to search for levitation online. When he does, he sees the man Hyunjin mentioned performing a live demonstration for everyone. The article reaches number 1, and the comments are filled with people asking whether it's real. Sunung-ho says that many of the comments are from ordinary people who have nothing to do with the situation. However, there are also some awakened individuals calling the man a smooth brain for revealing his trait to everyone. Sunho finds it hilarious that people curse others for not sharing information, yet get angry when the information they know is spread. Still, he wonders how the government will respond to this. It looks like some people are trying to use shock and superpowers as an excuse to hold rallies. He decides not to dig too deeply into it, because once the second event happens, the Hobgoblin incident, he'll naturally be able to see the government's stance and direction. For now, he needs to make better use of his time. He apologizes to Dingo, saying that starting today, they need to begin exploration immediately, because thorough preparation is the only answer for him right now. Sunung-ho asks Dingo if he's ready. Dingo wags his tail and barks, clearly understanding. Sunung-ho explains that out of everything he could do, the reason he chose interdimensional exploration is simple. First, he needs to prepare for the upcoming Hobgoblin event. To do that, Dingo needs to properly imprint the scent of goblins. He leads Dingo directly to a hiding spot based on scent, and Sunho says it's better than he expected. Next, he needs to see whether Dingo can remain calm during live combat while also following commands. He sends Dingo forward, and Dingo immediately dashes toward a rabbit. Sunung-ho says that right now, he's trying to confirm whether hunting is possible in the other world as well. Dingo successfully catches the rabbit. Sunung-ho walks over, saying that last time it ran away so he couldn't properly check. Judging by the animal's size and claws, the creatures here are definitely stronger than those on Earth. After that, he continues exploring. One question keeps running through his mind: what would Dingo's intelligence stat be like? They head toward the valley, and at that moment, his health increases by 1. He's a little surprised, considering his health stat used to be 170 back when he was Kimbap. He's growing faster than he expected. Dingo begins panting, and Sunung-ho quickly runs over with a bottle of water, telling him that he said not to move alone in the forest. He realizes the burning sensation must be because Dingo ate something, and he recognizes it as a bull pepper. He tells Dingo he did great and promises to give him lots of treats later. With that harvest finished, they move on to their final hunt near the river. Sunung-ho asks Dingo if there are any scents or presences. Dingo shakes his head, signaling no. Sunho says that red trout aren't classified as monsters, so they don't give points or items, but for a curious, growing Dingo, the experience alone is worth it. Sunung-ho spears one, saying that they can now finish preparing for Phase 2 construction and head home. The next day, a sign is being loaded into the back of a truck. The construction worker says that wraps up the demolition and tells him to contact them if any repair issues come up. Sunho thanks him for working so hard in the morning, then looks back at his shop and says it hits hard now that it's been taken down. He walks inside, saying it was a necessary decision. If someone is lucky enough not to turn into a zombie, then looting shops will be natural. The same applies to him. If he survives, he'll scavenge too. He has no right to complain. Still, he says he should at least clean up. Hyunjin walks in, saying he guesses everyone's thinking the same thing, since he also left only the bare minimum of equipment yesterday. Sunho asks why he's here. Hyunjin flicks his forehead, saying Sunho left him on read yesterday, so he came to check whether he was dead or alive. Dingo starts barking at him. Hyunjin asks if Sunho always had a husky. Sunho replies that his previous dog died a long time ago, and Dingo is a new pet he brought home. Hyunjin says Dingo is adorable. Sunho still wonders what he's really doing here. Hyunjin repeats that he came because he was worried about whether Sunho was alive. Sunho asks if that's really all. Hyunjin says it's not. He also figured out who the people were that attacked Mikiyoung. A little later, they sit down, and Sunho asks if he's saying that the party Cole June formed was targeting Mikiyoung. Hyunjin confirms it and adds that INH is part of that group as well. He then points to the mountain behind them, saying that's where their hideout is supposedly located. Sunho asks how he figured all of this out. Hyunjin tells him that everything just lined up perfectly. Sunho asks him to explain, and Hyunjin says that he simply asked the guy who can levitate Jin-sung just in case. Jin-sung told him that he had met with Cole Jun's group before, but all of them seemed like bad people and their personalities clashed badly, so he refused their offer. After Mikiyoung's incident, female members started saying they wanted to leave the party. When Hyunjin asked what happened, they all said they had received offers from Awakener parties. He asks Sunho if it clicks now. Sunho says it does. Unlike Mikiyoung, they must have been tricked into joining. Hyunjin says that their party is now down to 4 members. Sunho is shocked, since there were 20 just a few days ago. Hyunjin says he can't say he doesn't understand. Honestly, his own party only has 2 Awakeners. Sunho remarks that it's ironic, they did them a favor and this is the result. Hyunjin says that's just how things are, and people only look out for themselves. More importantly, Hyunjin says he's worried about someone named June, and he debates whether he should call his ex-wife. Sunung-ho says he forgot that Hyunjin's situation is different from his, which is why he needs to ask whether his thinking is really correct. He tells him there's something he's curious about and asks what he would do if people started threatening him once the apocalypse arrives. Hyunjin answers that they'd have to kill him. His principle is not to harm others, but that's a given. In a disaster without the rule of law, absolute evil has no value in being kept alive. He adds that it's not like Sunho to ask something like that. Sunho says it just sort of came up. Suddenly, Sunho's phone starts going off like crazy, blaring a help alarm. Hyunjin says it scared the hell out of him and recognizes the sound as a lost child help alert. Sunho looks down at his phone and tells Hyunjin to watch Dingo for a minute. It was Mikyung who pressed the button. We see INH and his group harassing her. She says she refused them, but they keep following her, asking why they're doing this. INH tells her to think about it one more time. Another man steps forward, saying he'll handle it his own way. It's Cole June. There's also another guy whose name isn't remembered, so he's just called Skinny. Skinny says this is a redevelopment area, so no one's going to come. Cole June tells her to stop wasting her energy and not forget that they have traits too. We see Sunho hiding nearby with weapons as Cole June says he'll count to 3. As he starts counting, Sunho loads his slingshot and pulls it back right before 3, firing it. The shot flies straight and hits Cole June in the shoulder, causing him to drop his bat. INH and Skinny turn, wondering who it is. Sunho charges in, asking why she would ever answer them in the first place. He swings upward, striking INH's chin and sending him flying backward. He then turns to Skinny, who has a purple aura around his hand. Sunho realizes that must be his trait, and since the color is black, it must be the one that blocked Mikyung's vision. He strikes him on the back of the head with a club, sending him flying into a wall. Sunho starts panting and asks Mikyung if she's okay. She shouts back, warning him to watch out. Cole June leaps at him from behind in a surprise attack. Sunho narrowly dodges, but the blow cracks his helmet. He's shocked by how much power it had even though it barely grazed him. Cole June recognizes him and says he's going to make him pay today. Sunho can't believe it, saying that their traits are way too overpowered this early. Cole June tells his men to get ready because they're going all out. INH agrees and begins releasing lightning as he walks towards Sunho, saying this is what he deserves. Sunho hesitates, wondering what to do and whether he really has to use the dimensional gate. INH starts rushing in, but so does Dingo. Dingo bursts out of the alley, bounces off the wall, and bites down on INH's arm. Hyunjin says this isn't appropriate in the middle of the day and suggests they leave immediately if they don't want to cause a scene. As he calls the police, he asks them what they think of his offer. Cole June says they'll retreat for today. Hyunjin scoffs, saying he can't believe how cocky they are despite being so scrawny. He asks Sunho if he's okay. Mikyung teleports down from the roof and asks if he's hurt. She rushes over, grabs his helmet, and asks if he's really okay. Hyunjin asks if he wants a piggyback. Sunho wonders why To and Payak are overlapping with these people in his mind. Mikyung insists they go to the hospital, but Sunho says he's fine and doesn't have time to lie down. He asks Hyunjin if it's okay for him to take Mikyung into his group. Hyunjin says that if she's okay with it, then he is too, they already have a connection. He says he'd be happy. Mikyung says that if Sunho is okay with her, she'd be thrilled. Sunho says he needs to take care of something and that he'll see them next time. As he walks away, Hyunjin and Mikyung wonder what's wrong with him. After returning home, Sunho organizes his thoughts and brings forward his plan for the second stage of preparation. His sudden departure was unavoidable. Seeing the two of them made him feel like he could confide in them about his ability, but that choice was impossible. To maximize the privilege of having the gate, he needs to level up, farm skills, and overwhelm everyone with that power. That realization became even clearer while fighting Cole June's group. If he prepares for the apocalypse according to his plan, there will be a level gap of 3 or more. That gap would strengthen the monsters respawning around him and make it harder to party with the two of them. He continues his work and eventually finishes installing a wood-burning stove in his hideout. He says that now he can sleep well even if it gets extremely cold. He can tell Dingo likes it too, since Dingo falls asleep right next to the fire. Sunho says that once the remaining supplies arrive and are installed without issue, the initial hideout setup will be almost complete. And since he's already come this far, he decides he might as well pull an all-nighter tonight. The timeline isn't specified, but later on the news, there's an update about the asteroid. NASA announces that Yunjiangbai has reached the midpoint of the solar system, though they are still closely tracking its trajectory. They also reveal that Jupiter's gravity caused the meteorite to split, introducing a variable into their calculations. In response, Thomas Chandler, head of the observation department, states that the two fragments are named Yunjam Alpha and Beta, but neither poses any threat to Earth. Sunung-ho says he now understands what happened. 5 days before the apocalypse, Yunjam Beta was the first to fall, landing near a Russian ship. The resulting tsunami swept the ship ashore at a Korean port, marking the first appearance of zombies in their country. The backstory had seemed a bit strange before, but now he understands why. Next on the news, following a shootout, a tech worker reportedly hasn't left his office residence for a week. In response, opposition party leaders issue a joint statement announcing their agreement to hold a hearing. Some speculate this is connected to rumors about the Awakeners and the disaster. Sun-ho reflects that it really is the end of the world. But the one positive is that the media has taken an interest. This has made it harder for Awakeners to commit crimes. And he wonders how the community is reacting. We see people discussing plans to rob a bank the next day and other wild ideas. Sun-ho notes there are some crazy opinions, but that's about it. Then something catches his eye. He recognizes one of the names, My Dream, a player well known for being kind to noobs and someone he had played with several times. It turns out My Dream built a bunker, and Sun-ho thinks that if it weren't for the Portly, he might have been tempted to join. However, there's no news that My Dream's veteran friends have joined him. He won't be the one to initiate contact but decides to bookmark it for now, then says it's time to finish constructing the second shelter. The next day outside, Sunung-ho wonders if it's really possible to pull 2 all-nighters in a row. He feels like he'll pass out the moment he closes his eyes. Still, seeing how well the exterior turned out gives him a lot of energy. Now it's time for the main event. Using the electricity generated by the solar panels is much more complicated than it seems. Starting with converting DC to AC, he has to go through several wiring processes to make it compatible with electronic devices. We see him plugging in his phone, hoping it works on the first try. And it does. He says, "This is great," and starts shaking. Finally, the foundation for survival in his other world is properly set. Having made a pretty nice little room, he feels a rush of dopamine for the first time in a while. And with good reason. After digging further, he found a mineral harder and sharper than obsidian where he gathered the stones. He discovered a Morris. Though it's pretty much useless for now, it's better than nothing. He says he'll install the LED lights later tonight. Before going to sleep, he needs to organize the food supplies. Then he hears Dingo barking and wonders what's going on. He heads outside with his gear, asking Dingo what's wrong. What he sees surprises him, a red wolf and a pack of other wolves with it. Sun-ho says he doesn't know why creatures that live in high-altitude areas are here, but judging by how angry Dingo is, these must be the ones who killed his mother. He tells Dingo to be quiet, but of course Dingo can only see red. Sun-ho says he's in trouble and frankly has no way to defeat them right now. If he moves from here to get a proper weapon, he'll be showing his back and they'll tear him limb from limb. In that case, only one option remains. The solution he came up with was to make the alpha leave this place and have the rest of the wolf pack leave on their own. There's a reason he judged this to be possible. They are very cautious. Only after the alpha wolf makes the first move will they feel safe. He says they have a habit of launching coordinated attacks and, like any wolf, are vulnerable to strong scents. Fortunately, he has the pepper spray he used on the cobalt in his pocket. In other words, he can spray it on the alpha. While it won't kill it, it will drive it out of his shelter, but if it charges at him, he'll be the first to go down. He doesn't know if he can stop it and hit it with the spray in time. Then it clicks. He says he doesn't know if it's possible, but theoretically it is. He has no choice because if he backs down here, the shelter he worked so hard to build will be destroyed. He yells at the alpha, rears back his hand, and throws his knife forward. The alpha dodges the attack, growls at him, and leaps straight toward him. As it flies in close, Sun-ho opens a portal and closes it instantly, causing it to hit its head. He then pulls out the spray and lets that thing rip. The alpha begins spitting bile and Sun-ho runs in shouting, "Not yet!" He grabs it by the neck and stabs it straight in the eye. It then distances itself and runs away, causing the pack to follow. Sun-ho sits down and sighs with relief, saying he thought he was going to die of fear. Dingo runs over and Sun-ho tells him to stop being a baby and just wait a little longer. He'll definitely avenge his mother. He returned and finished organizing his basement, then went out to the hardware store and pharmacy, wanting to at least complete the minimal defenses before going to sleep. He had now been awake for 68 hours straight. He remarked that, in a way, he had gotten off easy. If they had been werewolves, there would have been no chance at all. Reflecting on it again, he realized he had been complacent, focusing only on the nearby living monsters he had seen while completely ignoring other variables. Since things had come to this point after conducting more drone surveys, it would be better to expand the land and build a shelter. That way, he could secure more space for farming and storing supplies. Hunjun spotted him across the road and called out to him, but Sun-ho was still lost in thought, saying he needed to build a moat to establish a second line of defense, while also adding more beacons to extend the reception range of his infrared laser. Hunjun called out again. Sun-ho asked what he was doing here. Hunjun replied that he wanted to ask him the same thing, and Sun-ho said he had come to buy something. Hunjun asked if he had come to buy weapons, too. Sun-ho questioned why anyone would buy weapons at a hardware store. Hunjun explained that it wasn't him but one of his team members who wanted to buy them. Then there was a brief recap. It turned out Hunjun had found his team member hanging around the hardware store but was now stopping her from buying weapons. Hunjun told Sun-ho that she simply didn't believe him, and Sun-ho asked why he hadn't just shown her the initial summary he had given her. Hunjun said, "Of course he showed her. but she can't accept the disease itself. Sun Ho then said, "Forget all that. This girl keeps staring at him without saying anything." Finally, she spoke, saying she recognized him and that he was the owner of the restaurant. Sun Ho confirmed that was right. She asked what had happened to him, as the atmosphere around him had completely changed. She apologizes, saying she might have been rude, and pulls out her card, introducing herself as Jo Su-yen. Se-ho introduces himself as well and takes her card, surprised to learn she is a certified doctor. After discovering she was a doctor, just as he had done with Hun-jun and Mikiao, he taught her the basic knowledge about the game. She admits she honestly doesn't really understand because, from a scientific perspective, there's no clear answer in game settings. Sun Ho responds that it's a game after all, and she agrees that's the part she understands but insists there's more she needs to know. When Sun Ho asks what more, she says she knows he's an awakener. Sun Ho asks why she thinks so, and she explains his explanations carry a certain certainty. And as she listened, that thought suddenly occurred to her. Sun Ho laughs, saying there's no way, and adds once more that a woman's intuition is terrifying. Su-yen thanks him, saying he was a huge help and that he seems very trustworthy. Hun-jin wonders what the difference between the two of them is, and she asks if he's really that clueless, saying they have different depths. Essie then tells Sun Ho she wants to be friends with him. The next day, we see Sun Ho excited in his bunker, saying he attached a spear blade to a shaft and it looks really good. With this, his main tool setup is complete. He tells Dingo that today's the day they'll go avenge his mother. Even if it's not really revenge, he says if someone discovers their hideout, they have to find and kill them as soon as possible, and he's sure Dingo understands he's going to be pulling his weight today. He even got Dingo a small gas mask. They then head out to their hideout, but Sun Ho is confused because there are only 4 wolves and he doesn't even see the alpha. Then he says he understands now as he looks through his monocular and sees the owlbear tearing apart the alpha. He says that as long as he keeps his distance, his neighbor is quite reliable, and a maned wolf pack that has lost its alpha is very easy to handle. It's as if their brains have been removed, leaving their coordination terrible, which allows him to take them down one by one. He shoots one with a net launcher, and the wolf begins screaming. Sun Ho says he'll put it out of its misery immediately, killing it and earning 3 points for the kill. The other wolves spot him running away from the trapped one and start chasing him. One takes the initiative and leaps straight at him, but he pepper sprays it as the other 2 flank him. Sun Ho pulls back his spear and stabs one directly through the chest while the other attacks from behind. He realizes the attack but decides to trust Dingo, who comes in headbutting the attacker. Sun Ho praises Dingo, saying good job, and tells him that from now on, he'll finish the rest himself since he just needs to make sure they're dead. He gains more points and levels up to 5. Now, additional effects have been added to his trait. Curious, he wonders what these new effects are. We see that he has gained the abilities of transparency, which allows the door to become invisible to others, and projection, which shows the scenery beyond the door. He can also hear sounds from the projected location. Sun Ho thinks that's cool and opens the door immediately, becoming even more amazed as he can see inside his house. He wonders if the transparency is automatically enabled and says this is insane. He had been worried about what would happen if a dungeon gate resembling a dimensional door appeared later, but this eliminates those inconvenient aspects and compensates for many weaknesses. If this effect appeared at level 5, it means more effects will likely be added. He had never really considered the level before, unsure if the skill would grow, but now he thinks he should pay even closer attention to the events that will soon unfold. But before that, he still has more to accomplish, and he needs to bury these wolves before they turn into creepers. Oh man, we're back in the mine. There's a 2-day time skip since the wolf subjugation. During that time, he accomplished a lot. First, back in the other world, he conducted another ecological survey. Within a radius of about 1 kilometer, only various animals were present. He confirmed once again that there were no monsters. Then he received information about a goblin nest 3 kilometers away. Nest that large probably contains hobgoblins, so it would be too difficult for him to tackle right now. After gaining confidence in his safety, we see him with a chainsaw, declaring that it's time to begin. He started clearing the surrounding bushes and trees to level the area and transform the hideout into a shelter. With Dingo's help, they made a large circle 30 m in diameter. I wonder if he could fit a mini excavator through his portal, but he says he plans to set up 2 layers of circular barbed wire fencing and dig a moat outside. He's looking down at it, saying it probably needs to go 2 m deeper. Of course, all this is done while monitoring the situation in real time through the dimensional gate. In reality, he began by buying various materials from distant hardware stores. He visited a large home improvement store for a commercial-grade tool set. Then on the way home, he checked out Cheljin's hideout. He rented a motorcycle and a mini excavator. Holy shit, I spoke it into existence. Also, thanks to Jadak, he has been injecting a certain amount of poison daily for resistance, and it finally accumulated enough to use on a weapon. Right now, though, he's extremely flustered as he reads a post saying this is shit. Dream says that one joined his group. Sun Ho wonders if that means the shootout, the government's media control, and the president's behavior of not leaving the residence are all just coincidence. But no matter how much he thinks about it, it doesn't make sense. The reason he judged that one would be beside the president wasn't just because he guessed one would know about the event, but because one was an item collector who definitely would demand a massive shelter in exchange for info. Among the candidates worth cooperating with, he assumed one would choose the president, who had the highest authority. The possibility of it being a bluff was somewhat high, but why would Dream do that? It was confusing, yet dragging it out wouldn't solve the problem. If one really joined Dream's side, he'd have to change his plans too. Sun Ho headed to a PC cafe, creating a fake ID for the game and a VR ID. He messaged Dream, asking if they could hop into chat. Sun Ho said if he didn't reply soon, he'd have to postpone. Dream said not many people knew his ID and asked where they should go. Sun Ho wondered if maybe he was actually unemployed, then told him to go to the White Room. They continued their brief conversation, and Sun Ho said it was time to see if Dream was the real deal or a fake. We see Dream entering the White Room. He thanked him for the invitation but said this wasn't very pleasant. Sun Ho asked why. Dream told him that even though he came into VR chat at his request, he was still maintaining an unknown alias and wearing a ridiculous mask. Sun Ho apologized, saying he wouldn't gain anything by being chummy with him. Dream asked if that meant he was a veteran. Sun Ho said he could be, but he also might not be. Dream said very well. He'd ask 3 questions. If he answered them correctly, he'd acknowledge him. Sun Ho said, bet. Then Dream asked, what's the maximum vertical jump height of a werewolf? Sun Ho answered, 3m. Dream asked about the owlbear's weakness. Sun Ho said, surely you're kidding. It's light. Then Dream asked about the evolution stages and forms of zombies. Sun Ho said zombies don't have infection abilities. Instead, they consume nutrients. When nutrients accumulate, they transform into ghouls, but before that, some become enhanced zombies. Dream says that's a good thing. Then he asks how many events are supposed to happen in reality. Sun Ho replies that he doesn't intend to tell him, and Dream laughs, saying he truly is one of the veterans. Sun Ho tells him to shut up and says this should be enough proof to call one over because if it's real, he'll join too. Dream says, fortunately, he can't do that. Sun Ho asks why not. Dream replies, by the way, the weather is really nice today, and I have a feeling something is about to happen. Sun Ho says it sounds like nonsense meant to buy time. Then he realizes, saying Dream must have been tracking his IP the entire time. As Dream says goodbye, some men in suits enter the PC cafe. One man tells the others to block the door. The woman tells him to pay for his time to use the computers. But he says that's not why they're here. They didn't come to play games. They came to find someone. He looks into her eyes and tells her to cooperate. She becomes mind-controlled, saying, of course. He says that judging by the situation, the target is a metal type, and if so, they need to act fast. If he's caught, he'll become a puppet. The man heads into the bathroom and uses the dimensional gate one by one. He asks everyone in the room if they are unknown. After checking everyone, he realizes there's only one place left and heads into the bathroom. He tells Unknown to stop joking and come out already. Then he wonders if maybe Unknown has stealth-type abilities. He's dealt with them before, so he knows that splashing water reveals spots where moisture remains uneven, or if you manage to grab them somehow, it's instant game over for them. Sun Ho says he's glad he was pressed flat against the wall as it was too close. He almost got caught. He realizes that he's not a stealth-type user and pulls out his radio, announcing that he's a movement type and they need to search the area immediately because this is a big catch. He adds that if they capture him alive, he'll get them whatever they want. Sun Ho remarks that it's truly bitter. Even though Dream was wealthy in real life and a gentleman in the game, seeing him trying to make slaves is a pitiful sight. He then thanks Dream as he coats his spear with poison. I honestly didn't know that was Dream, my bad. He admits, but Sun Ho says he had resolved himself many times before, yet he was still hesitating thanks to Dream, though his thoughts are now clear by his own standards. He will respond to fire with fire. Dream wonders who the hell this veteran is supposed to be. Even if his skill is movement type, as he guessed, a veteran with tons of accumulated playtime definitely has more tricks up his sleeve. Just as he thinks this, Sunung Ho appears behind him and dashes forward. Dream notices, but it's too late. He's cut on the leg and instantly poisoned. Dream says he's unknown before Sun Ho slams his face into the glass, saying he never told him he could turn around. Then he asks how it feels. Since the poison must be spreading through his body, Dream tries to say something else, but Sun Ho tells him to stop talking. Since the apocalypse hasn't begun yet, the tutorial hasn't started, which means the murder system isn't unlocked either. He draws a gun from his hip, saying that even if he kills Dream, he won't face any penalties. Dream falls silent, and Sun Ho says that since he's a semi-veteran, he should understand what that means. While he's still conscious, his body won't move. He then asks why the hell Dream is selling out Survivor 1 and targeting innocent people. Finally, he tells him that right now, he looks less like a human and more like a monster that's easy to farm. Dream calls him a bastard as Sunung Ho begins stealing his belongings, warning him to consider it the price for trying to deceive him and turn him into a slave. Next time, it won't just be a warning. He'll actually kill him. Then he strikes him on the back of the head with his knife. He explains that before the group arrived, he escaped the cafe and went straight home, heading directly to the other world. He pulls out the wallet and gun he took from him. The first thing he checks is the ID. His name is Kwon Kung Jin. He's 38 years old and owns a golf club. From there, he controls 3 bunkers but is also a notorious womanizer. Apparently, he has good skill based on his total playtime. He's been conducting experiments using his skill. Mind control. Sun Ho says this should be all the useful information he has, but points out that skills don't necessarily improve just from long playtime. Otherwise, what about him? Then he reflects that since the goal of the game was always survival, his skill is essentially cheat tier, but only for veterans. He decides to keep that hypothesis likely until he can verify another veteran's skill. Right now, with a game like Apocalypse approaching, there's only one thing he can be sure of. Simply becoming an Awakener has already boosted his physical abilities beyond those of normal humans, of course. His recent training helped as well. He says that next time he practices shooting, he'll do it without a full magazine. Suddenly, He hears his notifications going off repeatedly and looks over, wondering what's happening. He sticks his head through the portal, browses his computer, and is surprised, since the second event has now occurred. Sunung-ho says this is good. He jumps into the car and starts driving, wondering why it has to be so far away. Then he sees an update about someone spotting a goblin near the reservoir. He quickly pulls over to the side of the road and hops out. He tells Dingo that they're going to start hunting goblins now. The moment he saw the post, he grabbed the whip and headed straight for the mountains for two reasons. First, with the problem this serious, the police would obviously begin sealing off the area. Second, since goblins are roaming monsters, they would almost certainly set up a temporary nest under the hobgoblin's command. He asks Dingo to catch their scent quickly so they can follow it. Dingo barks, then starts sniffing the ground. Before looking up and leading Sunho forward, Sunho is surprised that Dingo picked up the scent so fast but feels proud of him. Dingo speeds up, jumping through some bushes with Sunho quickly following behind. He calls his dog an idiot and asks if there isn't a better path. Dingo barks, and up ahead Sunho sees cops lying on the ground surrounded by goblins. He tells himself to stay calm as he approaches one of the officers, checking his breathing and noting that he's still alive. Since there are no visible wounds, Sunho concludes the officer was only hit with paralysis poison. But he wonders who took the cop's gun, or if maybe he was suddenly deployed and never had one. He lines the officers up side by side, saying if they rest for about 30 minutes, they'll recover. Then he examines the goblins, noting they're riddled with bullet holes. He questions why the gun was taken in this situation, then considers the possibility that a gold goblin is among the group. If that's the case, he knows he can't let anyone else take it. With that decision made, he uses the cop's phone to call for backup. He leaves a note with their exact location and instructions to bury the goblin corpses so they won't rot. Since monsters have already spread across social media, hiding them now is pointless. From this point on, it's a race against time. He tells Dingo he's counting on him. Elsewhere on the mountain, a man blocks an attack and swings at a goblin, which backsteps to avoid it. He then asks his captain if it's true that he, a non-awakener, is supposed to be the tanker. The guy tells him he has no choice since his specialization is psychokinesis, which has a fairly long cast time, but not to worry as he hurls 3 rocks forward, taking out one of the goblins. He assures him that he'll definitely provide cover. The tanker asks if he's sure the other party members are on their way. He replies that they've already reached the mountain but said they couldn't climb up easily because the police were blocking their path. The tanker then wonders if they should retreat as well. However, the guy tells him to see it as an opportunity, explaining that they've encountered these goblins many times in the game, and all of them are without their main weapons and paralysis poison. The tanker thinks to himself that he assumed everyone who played the game had awakened. Maybe that wasn't true. The guy insists that even so, he's having a hard time. His captain tells him not to panic and to keep doing what he's doing. If they can handle these goblins and capture the hobgoblin group that left the main pack, they'll gain a huge advantage. He adds that if he understands, they should stop complaining and focus. Suddenly, a club swings in from left field, hitting him in the arm and distracting him. He drops to his knees, saying he can't believe a mere goblin figured out their counter-strategy. He wonders what to do next as the goblins start taking space and charge at the 2 of them to finish the job, but then an arrow flies through the air, striking one of them in the head. 2 more arrows follow, landing with another headshot and one in the chest. The tanker looks over, confused, wondering where the arrows came from. We then see Sun K-ho inside his bunker, saying he's not sure if it was necessary to use all 3 arrows, but that he paid a fair price thanks to them. He confirmed that the Awakeners couldn't climb up, and he was able to encounter a weakened group of goblins. From now on, he must move quickly. The plan he devised for handling the goblin group was simple. First, he would provoke the goblin's aggression. As the enraged goblin approached the gate, distracted by the soda cans he had set up, he would stab it from behind. To the monsters, the gate was invisible. As soon as the goblin screamed in pain, he would use the dimensional gate as a barrier, withdraw the spear, and erase all traces of the attack. Then the hobgoblin, with high perception stats, would see only its fallen subordinate, and command the remaining 3 goblins. He would seize the chance and cleave through them all at once, just like he had done many times before. After instantly killing all 3, he said everything was going according to plan so far. Now, he needed to respond based on the behavioral patterns of those left. What surprised him was that the gold goblin was running away from the hobgoblin. He said that since it had come to this, he would have to gamble. The hobgoblin charged in, and he admitted it was insane, but he had no choice, as he blocked the attack with his machete. The force still sent him flying into a tree. He started coughing up blood, saying the shock was greater than he expected. If he lost consciousness, it would be all over here. As the hobgoblin moved to finish him off, his survival instinct activated. His eyes glowed golden as the hobgoblin struck the tree. Sunho dashed past him, drew his pistol, and fired 2 shots into the back of the hobgoblin's head. Like YW Melly, then quickly opened his gate. He grabbed the loot and threw it into his bunker, declaring that with this, the first phase of farming was complete. The hobgoblin charged toward him again, so he raised his pistol and fired 1 shot into its shoulder and another into its bicep. It dropped to the ground. He asked if the hobgoblin really thought it would win just because it had hit him. Now he said it was his turn. As he quickly begins cutting it into pieces, successfully killing it, he levels up, gaining 18 points in the skill terrain sense. He lets out a sigh of relief now that it's over. The skill allows him to see, sense, and intuitively respond to the terrain within his field of view. He remarks that this is a pretty useful skill to get early on, which isn't bad. He also receives some gauntlets that grant him handiwork +2. He notes that, once again, the items he has equipped have turned into actual items. He guesses that last time he already had the watch equipped. That was his mistake. Suddenly, they hear another goblin scream and a man shouting that they're here. Sunho turns, wondering if the search party has already arrived, but says he took what he needed, so it's time for him to stay in his bunker until the search is over. The next day, inside his bunker, Dingo starts licking him and he wakes up, glancing at his clock and asking if he really slept the entire day. From now on, unless it's an extreme situation, he decides to avoid activating Will to survive. But before he heads outside, he wants to check the loot he got from the goblin. Sunho goes over to the loot and comments that, as expected, gold goblins really are different. He's obtained a revolver, which he finds impressive, but he didn't expect to see a knife with permanent invariance. It's made of mariel and isn't affected by the disease, but he wonders how a goblin, of all creatures, could have an item that costs 100 points in the shop. Examining the surface closely, he notes it's a bit bumpy. Then he pauses, saying that goblins in this world carry metal weapons, and considering their level of civilization, there's no way they could make them themselves. He starts to wonder if some kind of mutation might have occurred. He admits this might be mere speculation, but he'll have a chance to investigate the items further. He then pulls out some shade grapes, which enhance night vision. He explains this accounts for how the Dal goblins were able to move freely at night. Finally, he opens his status window, showing that his stats are quite decent and that he has 77 points to spend. He mentions his growth rate is much faster than it was in the game. That wraps up everything he needed to check in this world. He then opens the gate. As his signal connects, he is immediately flooded with messages. Curious about what's going on, he sees there from Hunjun, Mikyang, and even Su Yen. He says he's never been this popular before but decides to head to the fitness center. He does so, telling Hunjun that he's there. Hunjun and Mikyang quickly run over, and Hunjun says he was really worried. Sunho then asks who the people behind them are. Hunjun tells him to introduce himself, explaining they're his party members and that surely everyone knows Sunho is the snack shop owner. One of the men introduces himself as Lee Kyung-hun, and the woman as Kim Bora. Sunho introduces himself too, then he asks Hun where the last member is. Hunjun says that person went to the big camping gear discount store, asking Sunho if he knows about it. Sunho says he didn't know there was a place like that nearby. Mikyang says it opened just a month ago and everything there is very modern. Hun then asks if Sunho has checked everything about yesterday's incident and the news. Sunho replies that, of course, he watched it all on YouTube. The doctor who dissected the goblin found on the mountain warned everyone to prepare for the apocalypse, and the president held a national security meeting, announcing they would confirm the whereabouts of the survival life creator and consult the awakened one's opinions. Hunjun then asks Sunho what he plans to do now. Sunho asks what he means. Hunjun says that since Sunho knows a lot, they wanted to get his advice. Hun asks Hunjun if he's serious, reminding him that he already gave advice. Goblins only give points, and even if an awakened kills one, the best they do is level up from 1 to 2. He suggests Hunjun keep stocking up on supplies like he's doing now. Sunho asks what on earth this guy is talking about, telling Kyung-hun that he's wrong. Kyung-hun then asks if Sunho has even played the game. Sunho says no, but mentions that if you check the community a bit. Kyung-hun interrupts, saying, exactly, trusting the community too much isn't good, and asks if he understands. Bora then turns to Kyung-hun, saying she's been curious for a while about exposure to zombie spores. She wants to know who turns into zombies, who survives, and if there are conditions that determine whether you turn after infection. Kyung-hun replies that, at the very least, anyone who has come into contact with an awakened should be fine. She asks him to explain more, and he gets a little angry, saying they surely already know why he awakened. It's because he played the game and shorties made contact with the system. Meaning that even though they're not awakened, since they've interacted with him, they're safe. Bora says that when he puts it like that, it sounds convincing and she'll stick with him from now on. Kyung-hun laughs, telling her to trust him, but Mikong says she also has a question. She mentions the tutorial was super hard and asks if he cleared it. He ignores her, telling her not to worry, as he'll make sure to protect all of them. Sunho just wonders what this guy's deal is. He admits it's a somewhat credible hypothesis, but there's no evidence anywhere that awakened people can be exposed to spores and stay fine. He sighs hopelessly, thinking Hunjun probably called him because he doesn't trust this guy either. He decides to get up for now, not wanting to give direct information to someone like him. He tells Hunjun that he has some plans and will contact him again later. After leaving the club, he revised the list of places to scavenge before the disease arrived, adding the camping store Hunjun had mentioned and removing the convenience store. By the time he reached his house, he met Su-yen, who had been waiting for him. She said she had something to show him. She came to give him something and asked if he could stay for a bit. He agreed and asked what it was. She said it was a pack of painkillers and antibiotics he couldn't buy without a prescription. He asked if she was really giving them to him, and she replied, why not? If she ran out, she could just forge a prescription and get more. She told him her address, saying it was also written on the pouch. He asked why she was giving him that too. She said it was a give-and-take arrangement since they needed to know each other's locations. He said if that was the case, then it was fine. She said she was going to stop by and talk to Hunjun, so she'd be off now. He told her to be careful, and she told him to make sure to pay for the medicine and not forget the address. As she walked away, she said he was very aggressive. After the second meeting with Su-yen, time passed quickly again. During that time, he visited various places and bought many items and pieces of equipment in this world. He built a storage facility using sandwich panels and began loading items into it. After receiving the mini excavator he had reserved, he started doing construction work on the side. Meanwhile, the world grew chaotic. On TV, people argued non-stop until the UN called in. Emergency meeting, articles flooded in about the US president planning to visit Korea and sensing something strange that NASA hadn't predicted. Starting with Yunjam by Beta, Yunjam by Alpha was announced to be coming to Earth. For full days had passed, and now he stood at the port where the final event, the arrival of the Russian ship, was to take place. After confirming that nobody was at the harbor, he entered an abandoned building to prepare. Inside, he opened his gate and explained why he had come here despite the high chance of becoming a zombie. To obtain extra guns from the Russian vessel, the zombie spores, pathogens in the form of particle beams, had strong permeability and were unavoidable. Becoming a zombie now or 5 days later made little difference to him as someone without a family. Of course, there was the option of living in the other world with Dingo, but what meaning would that have as a human? With this, his preparations were complete. That didn't mean he intended to die. He had simply made a different choice from others. High risk, high reward. That's what life was about in the end. He was reading some old patch notes covering various things, such as the 10-point weapon provided during the tutorial, nerfs to zombies, and the diversification of point acquisition methods. All of this would start with the arrival of the Yunjam Beta. He was a little surprised, saying it was as if the admin knew the apocalypse was coming to reality. Suddenly, a beep sounded from his phone, and he realized it had started. He read that the Yunjam Beta would impact near the South Sea. Right outside the port where he was, sirens flared, and the tide on the beach began to recede. Much like a receding hairline, as boats started to get beached, but in the distance, one vessel was being carried by the waves, swept up in what had formed into a mini tsunami. The chaos sweeps through the city, and Sunho mutters, "This shit is insane." He says dealing with zombies and monsters is much easier than facing natural disasters, which just seem hopeless to survive. His hands start trembling, and he insists he needs to move quickly. We see he has all his gear ready. He suits up and pushes his boat, stressing the urgency to move before government agents arrive. He jumps into the water and heads straight for the vessel. Once aboard, he ties himself in, though his hands are shaking badly. Glancing to the side, he notes that it seems awakeners don't turn into zombies. Just as Kyung-hun said, he doesn't even feel a prickling sensation. But for him, good is good, so he decides it's time to head upstairs. When he does, he spots the zombified sailors and greets them, asking if they've been well. The zombies in this game are somewhat special according to the game settings. Instead of lacking the ability to infect with the virus, they see everything as prey and grow stronger the more nutrients they absorb. He charges in with a shield, knocking one to the floor before raising his mace and bashing its skull in. Then quickly dispatching the other, he wonders if the zombies have been nerfed too much. He gains 4 points, saying, "Originally, even with an iron weapon, I'd have to land at least 2 more hits to kill them." Still, he can't let his guard down like with orcs. As a veteran player, that kind of mistake can only happen once. He moves inside, noting the zombies are definitely swarming, but he'll focus on clearing those in the hallway. He gains 4 more points by one-shotting both, then says he needs to head to where the chance of finding a pistol is highest. The wheelhouse. Suddenly, he hears a gunshot and a voice asking if there's still a survivor on board. This means that even if a non-awakener hasn't been in contact with an awakener and gets exposed to zombie spores, they might still survive by chance, so he needs to save them first. That way he can get definite information when he arrives, though he sees he was a little too late because the gunshot wasn't for the zombie. The man had blown his own brains out while holding a photo of his wife. Sunho realizes that if he had been just a little faster, he could have saved him. He reaches over, saying, "This won't be much comfort," but closes his eyes, thanks him for helping, and even lays him out properly. Then he walks off the boat, reflecting that things like this will probably happen a lot after the apocalypse. And of course there will be times when he has to kill people to survive too. As he cuts his rope, he hears another boat and turns. Seeing someone just as crazy about farming as he is, they don't exchange glances and simply ride by each other. Sunho says he should just consider it practice since half-hearted hypocrisy is disgusting. The next day at dawn, the news asks where the survival life developer is. Sunho says that judging by the president's actions after obtaining proof about the zombies, it's basically confirmed their thinking is similar. It's time for him to do his part. Since he's giving help, he might as well include various information. He starts calling into the tip line, and a man introduces himself as Lee Woo-bom, administrator of the countermeasures headquarters. Sunho says he knows the exact time of D-Day. Woo-bom asks him to please unblock the ID. Sunho asks if the goblin had gunshot wounds on his shoulder. Woo-bom now realizes he's serious, and Sunho says he doesn't intend to speak for long. The exact time for D-Day is set for July 20th at 1:300, and a package is expected to arrive sometime this afternoon. He hopes to make good use of it and wishes him luck in the war. Sunung-ho remarks that the president's decisiveness was impressive, and many people on the forums are discussing the internet blackout. Sunho responds that, since he can only verify information through social media, he can't be certain if it's accurate. Then he overhears military personnel outside using a megaphone, instructing citizens to secure 4 days' worth of food and water and return to their families immediately. All business activities must cease, and everyone should go home. This is an official statement regarding the current situation, made on July 20th. Sunho comments that the response is perfect and almost makes him regret not warning them earlier. If he had known they would handle things this well, He might have taken the risk when his trait first appeared and acted from the start. But he acknowledges that it wouldn't have prevented the disaster anyway, and he shouldn't dwell on what-ifs. He reminds himself of the promise he made that day. He's not a hero, just an ordinary guy. Since the lockdowns made it impossible to do anything in the real world, he decided to stay in the other world a bit longer. 3 days before D-Day, he finished digging the moat. At this rate, though, it's going to take a few more days. He sorted through the videos he had saved, things like cooking, tutorials, and basic farming lessons, just genuinely organizing them. 2 days before D-Day, he began scouting with Dingo and discovered that the sun apples had fully grown in just a month. He needs to verify this further. But perhaps the entire forest is enchanted fertile land. The next day, a problem arose. 2 of his sweet potato jellies were missing. There was also a dried-up grape on the floor, and he asked Dingo if he was responsible. Dingo shakes his head no, and Sun Ho tells him there's no lying allowed, causing Dingo to roll onto his back and whimper. Sun Ho says that judging by his reaction, it probably wasn't him. He decides to check the CCTV footage. Sitting down, he reviews it and is surprised by what he sees. A group of beetles entering through the doggy door, taking his sweet jellies and leaving a grape as repayment. One little beetle even bows to him, and Sun Ho is amazed at how smart it is. He also finds it super cute. He says he's really wanted to track them down and see them for himself. But for now, he's just going to lock the doggy door. Dingo wonders what he's doing, and Sun Ho says he has guests coming over today. As Sun Ho heads back inside, he thanks everyone for coming. We see it's Han Jun's group. Sun Ho says he's glad they made it despite the lockdowns. He then asks who the man sitting with Han Jun is. Han Jun says he's the last member of their party, so they brought him along to introduce him. The man introduces himself as Yuyan, saying he awakened but turned the game off right away, so he doesn't know much about it. However, in the real world, he has a major in electrical engineering, which he's confident in. Sun Ho says that's good enough for him and introduces himself. Han Jun says he's heard a lot about Sun Ho and asks him to treat him comfortably. Sun Ho says that since they're short on time, he wants to end the intros here and have everyone share the info they have one by one. Telling Han Jun to start. Han Jun, a little confused because he's slow, says he was on the phone with his ex-wife when the line suddenly went dead. Worried about his daughters, he drove over to check on them, but on his way back, he saw something. Barricades being set up on the highway. From what he'd heard, they were evacuating citizens living near one of the chemical complexes. Sun Ho then asks Su Yen, who replies that she was with her group the entire time and only has a little information. They built a shelter in the citizens' park. Han questions whether that's even possible, and she admits it's hard to believe but says she saw it with her own eyes. Though she still has doubts, Sunung Ho then asks Mikiao, who says she was at the mart with Yu Hyan and overheard something. They heard that high-ranking officials opposing the president's decision have been detained. Sun Ho remarks that this is actually better news than he expected. Now he understands the president's intentions and can confirm that the end is approaching. If you're wondering why he's asking them for information one by one, it's simple. To make someone understand, you need to provide the right reasoning and details. Revealing that he's a veteran of the game would make persuading them easier, but there are risks involved, and he has a specific plan in mind. He tells them all to listen carefully, as it seems the president is aiming for a controlled apocalypse. They're all surprised and ask what he means. He points out how strange it is that unexplained lockdowns began on the afternoon of July 16th, and for 4 days all national facilities have been at a standstill, so why else would the government make that choice? Yu Hyan agrees that it makes sense, and Su Yen concurs, saying the end is really coming. She suggests the government must have learned the exact day of D-Day and taken action. Sun Ho confirms this and adds that if they infer further, the control will probably lift on July 20th. Yu Hyan and Mikiao start panicking, saying they need to warn their families, but Sun Ho tells them to calm down. It may sound harsh, but this is a time when individual survival takes priority over family, and they must not forget that any one of them could become a zombie as soon as tomorrow. Still, he wants to move on to the main point. The reason he called them together was to share the tutorial strategy guide along with survival information. Han Jun asked how he knew that, and Sun Ho explained it was because he had watched Kimbap's videos, apologizing for keeping it a secret until now. He also apologized to Mikiao for hiding it, but she said it was fine since she had lied to him as well about being awakened. Sun Ho told them they were free to use the information however they wished, but when it came to the tutorial, he begged them to follow the manual faithfully. That night, after everyone left and midnight arrived, he reflected on the extensive preparations he had made over the past 32 days, admitting it wasn't perfect. Moreover, he acknowledged that his selfishness, disguised as necessity, might cause problems later, but he had no regrets. Nearby, on a mountain, anti-air missiles launched, exploding alongside a meteor. Sun Ho watched, saying the end was inevitable and that it was time for the apocalypse to begin. At dawn, the lockdown was lifted, having completed his basic preparations during that time. He added bulletproof glass and reinforced wooden doors as part of his usual morning routine. He then injected a small dose of paralyzing poison and forced himself to exercise to build resistance. Seen doing 3001 push-ups. Later, he changed back into his combat suit and had breakfast with Dingo. He waited until the promised time of 9 o'clock for the lights to come on. On the TV, a technician was Giving a speech, Sun Ho said the national address was so overwhelming that he wondered who else could have led them to such a dignified end if not for this person. He expressed a genuine hope that the end wouldn't come, but since it was already here, he resolved to survive as a veteran of the apocalypse. A detail we glimpsed from the very beginning. There were 4 hours left until the spores made landfall. He spent 2 hours checking the warehouse where he planned to store his farmed items, then setting up the equipment he'd use after the disease hit, and preparing the training ground before returning to reality. But as soon as he came back, it was exactly as he expected. It had become a living hell. There was a chubby naked guy wandering the street. Naturally, there was fighting, brawling, and people unleashing their suppressed desires. The man said that if they were all going to die soon, they might as well start getting jiggy with it. Right before he got hit by a car, with people killing others without a shred of guilt, it was of course INH and Kellen's group. Chelgen suggested they just say they'd gotten rid of some bad luck. Besides, they couldn't use the car once the disease hit anyway. He told Sun Ho to stop watching from the rooftop like a loser, warning that if he turned into a zombie, he'd do him the favor of turning him into points. Sunung Ho replied this wasn't some grand era of romance, wondering what the strange declaration of war was about. Then a flyer flew past his head, and he looked up to see a plane dropping them from above. He said the government worried about its citizens' safety until the very end and were completely different from someone like him. If only there were people like them, the apocalypse might even be bearable, but everyone was different and there was nothing he could do. It was time for him to go and get ready. Only 3 minutes left. Until the spores made landfall. With that, the reality check was complete. He hoped this would be enough to use before the disease struck. And he was sure he'd memorized the farming route properly. He glanced at his watch, wondering, what if he forgets to take off his non-magic metal watch after the disease? Then he laughed at himself, saying it wasn't like he had a safety obsession. He'd done everything he could. From now on, all he could do was pray everything went exactly according to plan. As the spores begin to settle, people on the streets start collapsing to their knees, overwhelmed by the virus and turning into zombies, just as Sango predicted. They're all searching for prey. He drives through the street, noting there are actually fewer zombies than he expected, but now he understands why. Most people spent their final moments with their families. He wonders if anyone around hasn't turned into a zombie yet, but for now, he thinks this is better, since when he's farming, they usually just get in his way. He stops first at the pharmacy, noticing the shutters aren't down. This is lucky for him. He smashes the door open and activates his portal, saying he needs to move quickly from now on. It takes time for the spores to fully control the zombies, so if he can raid the hardware store before then, he should avoid unnecessary fights. As he begins tossing shit through his portal, some of it lands near Dingo, confusing him until it starts pelting him. That's a dog pile. Sun Ho says he's completely emptied out the pharmacy, judging by his progress so far. He thinks he can finish faster than expected. At least that's what he believed until he reached the hardware store and saw it was double locked. He says he anticipated something like this, so he brought an oxygen cutter, but it's much louder than he thought. He hears footsteps and realizes that even though their ability to track organic matter was nerfed by a patch, the zombies are still coming for him because of the cutter's noise. Sun Ho says, we already saw this during the Russian ship incident. We should know that zombies in their early stage, before absorbing any nutrients, are weak. At that stage, even after the nerf, a newbie can easily handle them as long as they know the weak points. He quickly takes one down just as 2 more rush him from the side. He swings downward at the woman and then across the man's face. The difficulty in real life has become easier than it was in the game. He gains 6 points and remarks that earning points is much simpler now. Though he's unsure how to handle the situation, normally, the usual tactic would be to lure them into an alley and take them out one by one. But at the moment, his movement is limited, since he happens to be carrying an oxygen cutter. He decides to use it and kill them all at once. He warns them only once, saying that until now, the only reason he avoided them was to not waste his farming time. He begins cutting off their heads one after another, insisting it wasn't because he was scared. He pushes them back before more can leap at him. He distances himself, evading their attacks, telling them to think carefully because there's someone who has dumped over 500 hours into that lousy game. Without ghouls here, there's no way he'd lose to the likes of them, especially when they aren't even gathered in a proper swarm. He starts toppling them over one another and says it was fun, so they should consider this a reward. Now that he's got them all together, he lights up his cutter and says he'll send them off with a bang, then begins drilling into them. After the intense fight with the zombies, he finishes scavenging the hardware store and heads toward the local police station. Unfortunately, the armory has already been looted. Before he can even feel disappointed, among the corpses scattered across the parking lot, he finds one with a backpack and manages to get exactly what he wanted. Meanwhile, by the time he moves to the 4th location, things remain manageable, thanks to the terrain detection skill he acquired from the hobgoblin and the boost to perception and handiwork from his items. He can easily avoid the zombies that are slowly starting to gather and chase him. When he arrives at the motorcycle specialty shop, he expects it to be ransacked because everyone thinks alike. He stores the one remaining ATV and various supplies. While checking his status in the other world, he takes a short break to clear the debuff effects, remarking that the other world is broken. After that, he returns to reality, contemplating where to farm next. However, just as a motorcycle is heard approaching, it becomes clear that things won't be as easy as he hoped. We then see INH saying they've finally found him. INH tells him that if he's not awakened, He should stay humble and keep inside like one. He adds that he's been looking for him for a long time. INH launches an attack at Sunung-ho, but Sunung-ho dodges by stepping backward. He says they'll see him soon enough anyway, and that this is just obsession, wondering what to do. He opens his gate. INH tells Skinny to watch the zombies, and Sunho says that no matter how he does it, killing them is simple. INH charges into the building, asking if he's ready to die. Sunung-ho replies that since the tutorial hasn't started, the system wouldn't classify him as a murderer. Even if it did, the first kill only triggers a warning, so it wouldn't be a problem. INH wonders where he went, but Sunho says it still bothers him whether it's okay to kill someone in real life or not. INH realizes too late that Sunung-ho isn't awakened as Sunho puts him in a chokehold. He tells him to answer quietly, asking why. He's targeting him. INH says it's because he took the girl he was drooling over. Sunung-ho asks what he means by took, and INH admits that he's already taken her to bed. Sunho kicks him in the back, warning this is his last chance to redeem himself. At the very least, he shouldn't harm innocent people. INH laughs, saying that's rich coming from someone who came to loot, adding that they're both selfish trash who only care about themselves. He grabs his crossbow and fires it at Sunung-ho. Sunung-ho dodges and admits, that's true. Hearing it, he agrees with himself, then he thanks him, saying that the words helped clear his mind and that he really is trash just like him. He places one hand on his face and the other on his neck, as if Hick is begging for mercy. Sunung-ho says he didn't want to admit it and then snaps his neck. He mentions having fought over 100 death matches in the game. We see that he earned 50 points. He reflects that killing someone in real life feels worse than he ever imagined. His hands tremble as we hear Skinny screaming upon seeing Inuk's corpse. Sunung-ho calls him a crybaby and warns him to watch his back. He says, even if he's trash, just like them, they're thugs who steal from others without restraint and only care about satisfying their own desires. Skinny starts getting mauled. Begging for help, he cries out, reaching his hand towards Sunung-ho. Sunung-ho simply watches as they tear him apart, saying they are people who deserve to die in the apocalypse. The narration then explains how the murderer system functioned within the game. It was introduced 3 months after the game's launch to curb intentional trolling. The intention was good, aiming to reduce trolls, but the execution was a disaster. The first takedown only resulted in a warning because the creators feared losing users. However, from the third takedown onward, there was no escape and you earned the title. For the second takedown, the system assessed how involved you were in the offense. People became Pekarez to gain points and steal others' abilities. This was also influenced by an update that occurred a week before the game shut down, which added new, very powerful special abilities. The problem was that being a Pekar forced you to keep eliminating others indefinitely. A death field was activated to force fights to the end between players. If 3 or more people gathered, a magical barrier would appear on the spot. Inside, they were compelled to fight a death match until only one remained. Initially, this was an advantage for the Pekar, but ultimately it became a problem. Once you became a Pekar, your fate was completely sealed. Our protagonist then realizes that his heart does not beat like a Pekar's. With this, Sunho understands that the PK system has not been activated because the tutorial hasn't started yet. This means that for a few hours, he can eliminate people without facing any consequences. But our protagonist remembers that this isn't just a game and that he must not lose his mind. So, he decides to stop entertaining such thoughts and resolves to follow the plan he had already set. Our hero then declares that his iron rule remains the same as always. And there is only one. This rule is very simple. Respond to injustice with more injustice, without hesitation. That's why he decides that from now on, whenever he needs to take someone's life, it will be done immediately, and he will close his dimensional portal right after. Glancing at his watch, he notices it's already 4:30 in the afternoon and laments the lost time. He thinks going to the pesticide store was a good idea, but the zombies are getting in the way. Using his weapon scope, he sees survivors inside the building fighting among themselves. Suddenly, one of them, frustrated with the situation, shoots an arrow that breaks a window. The man in the red hoodie suggests they send a group out to leave while he tries to negotiate calmly. But the leader of the other group calls him an idiot and demands what he just said. The man in red then threatens him, but the other guy just laughs and doubts he has the guts. The man in red replies that they picked the wrong person to provoke and prepares himself. He shoots, saying his specialty in the game was hitting other players. The arrow strikes the other leader's shoulder, who screams in pain from the impact. His friends are shocked and ask if the archer has gone completely crazy. The archer and his girlfriend say this is the apocalypse and the law of the strongest prevails. The man in red then threatens them again, and the injured leader decides it's better for them to leave. As they exit, the archer remarks it would have been better if they had left earlier. The man is relieved, but suddenly hears a scream from the departing group. The injured leader shouts that he warned them about the zombies and now they're trapped outside. As a parting gesture, he throws a baseball bat at the window to break it. The noise draws the zombies' attention, and the archer calls him crazy for shouting. Our protagonist watches through his binoculars as the group flees desperately from the zombies on the street. He's impressed by the scene, thinking that guy gave him a rare spectacle. Sunho thinks that if he meets that guy again, he'll need to give him something as a reward. With that, he wonders if his item collection is finally complete and looks toward the portal. Our protagonist checks his watch and sees he still has over an hour remaining. He thinks that in moments like this, he really needs the help of his partner, Dingo. With that in mind, he decides to change the order of their plan and says that now it's his partner's turn. The narration then asks where zombies tend to gather most at the beginning. The answer is in places where nutrients can be easily consumed. That is, their favorite spots are large supermarkets full of food. That's why these locations are the ones you should avoid most at the start of the apocalypse. However, for players with over 1,000 hours of gameplay, the thinking is very different because, unlike the game, he is well prepared for what lies ahead in real life. Our protagonist then sees this as a great chance to level up quickly and a golden opportunity to reach level 10 and unlock the shop before the tutorial. But after finishing everything, he feels a shock of reality about what he's about to do. He wonders if it's a waste since the floor would get soaked in oil anyway. Yet, thinking calmly, he realizes that deep down it's not such a big loss. And since he has time until the tutorial, he thinks it will be a good experience for Dingo. Our protagonist then asks Dingo if he can do what they practiced. With everything ready, he prepares to finally put his new plan into action. He gives the signal and Dingo runs at full speed into the supermarket. Arriving there, he barks loudly to get the attention of the zombies who were eating. The creatures then notice the pup's presence and growl, ready to attack. Fearlessly, Dingo charges forward, using his paws to knock down the zombies in his way. The pup then jumps and hits two more creatures, who scream from the unexpected blow. He continues fighting, dodging the creatures' attacks with his wolf-like agility. After passing them all, he finally reaches the exit with the zombies hot on his heels. With that, he successfully lures the horde of zombies out of the large supermarket. Sunho watches the scene, impressed by the commanding presence of his partner. As expected, he flicks his lighter and prepares for the next stage of the plan. He then throws the lighter to the ground just as Dingo leaps over his arm. The lighter ignites the oil on the ground, causing the zombies to become disoriented by the sudden flames. Our protagonist praises his partner, calling him a genius for the flawless execution. A massive explosion follows, wiping out all the zombies at once. He levels up to level 11, earning 116 points and a dimensional slot. Night is approaching, and our protagonist has finally completed his supply run. He looted the supermarket and even grabbed some computers from an apartment building. Knowing the buildings would soon collapse, he hurried to leave the area. With that, he opens a dimensional portal in the middle of the street and locks in the coordinates. He crosses over to the other world on his motorcycle, which has now served its purpose. Upon arriving at his hideout, he switches to equipment free of metal. At his training ground, located 1 kilometer from the shelter, he prepares for the next phase. Our hero takes his preset gear and finishes readying himself for the worst. Sunho wonders if his appearance is suitable since there are no zippers or metal buckles. Glancing at his watch, he realizes there are only 3 minutes left until the event. Suddenly, a strange feeling of unease washes over our protagonist. The system then confirms that the portal only allows entry for him and his possessions. He confirms that the zombie spores and the wire disease spread through the wind. The zombie spores are extremely harmful to humans, turning them into monsters. Meanwhile, the metal wire disease destroys objects, so he can't afford to let his guard down. That's why he is at the training ground, surrounded by wood for protection. Our protagonist believes there's no point in worrying now and braces himself for the worst. If his equipment fails, all he needs to do is run to minimize the damage he suffers. For the moment, his focus must be on one single, most important task. With that resolve, he opens his portal and concentrates fully on keeping it stable. The countdown begins, and at 6 o'clock in the evening, the wire disease finally arrives. The plague lands in Korea and instantly begins distorting the entire city. In the game, this dreadful plague was known to everyone as the Middle Plague. This infectious disease obliterated all the civilization humanity had built. It reduced everything to dust in the blink of an eye, leaving nothing behind. Not even the electrical systems escaped. Everything was destroyed by the Middle Plague. Through the portal, Sunho watches the destruction spreading across the real world outside. Amid the ruins, the portal stands out like a window to another safe world. The city has been dragged back to the Stone Age. In just a few seconds of chaos, our protagonist had prepared for this, yet he is still stunned by the scene. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupts, and he is thrown backward by the force. He wonders if the blast was caused by the army's ammunition depot nearby, but he quickly pushes that thought aside, focusing instead on the iron beads in his hand. With a sigh of relief, he sees that the metal sphere remains intact. However, he soon realizes the situation is far worse than he had imagined. Looking at the ruined city through the portal, he knows he cannot call this a good outcome. Unsure of what to do next, he decides to close the dimensional portal for now. The only thing left is to follow his plan and prepare for what lies ahead. With this in mind, he walks back to his shelter, deeply worried. Upon arrival, he finds the little creatures from before, who seem to have been waiting for him. Sunho then asks why they have returned, and the creatures offer roots to the man. Our hero is puzzled and questions why they are suddenly giving him roots. He wonders if this is an apology gift, and the little creatures nod in agreement, or if they want to trade the roots for more of that sweet potato jelly they had eaten. At that, Sunho becomes annoyed and says he tried to be kind, but they are already crossing the line. However, upon closer inspection, he realizes that the little creatures are actually quite cute. Our protagonist decides to propose a deal to the little creatures. He explains that he doesn't need food, but rather strange and very special items. He then sighs, realizing that maybe they don't understand what he means. Sunho laments that no matter how smart they are, it's impossible to have a proper conversation with them. Suddenly, the little red creature picks up a branch with something black on the tip and raises it. Our protagonist is shocked and asks if they want to trade or for the jelly. The creature then draws a trade symbol on the ground and confirms his proposal. With an excited smile, he says that if they bring things like that, the deal is on, but the little creature becomes scared, and our hero apologizes for being a bit hasty. The leader then talks to his group, and they seem to be discussing the man's proposal. The red creature points at him, and our protagonist understands this as agreement. The system informs him that he has communicated with the swarm and that the chief requests a contract. Sunho is confused because with Dingo and the frog, he didn't need any contract before. He wonders if intelligent animals cannot be possessed, and the system confirms this. Our protagonist finds the contract oddly formal, but very simple. Since he has nothing to lose, he signs it, and the system confirms that the swarm is now his possession. Suddenly, the leader climbs onto his shoulder, leaving our hero confused by the situation. He realizes that the creatures are about to